Hi viewers, you are listening the Alpha King's Untold Stories, romantic audiobooks that will make your heart race and you will enjoy it a lot. Don't forget to subscribe for more enchanting love tales. Chapter 1. The Invisible Girl. The scent of rain-soaked pine needles always reminded me of my mother, but tonight it was tainted with expensive perfume, the cloying sweetness of roses and jasmine that made my stomach turn. Or perhaps it was the weight of 100 eyes on my back, eyes that slid right over me as if I were made of glass, transparent, forgettable. The grand hall of the Crescent Moon Pack buzzed with a tense, eager anticipation. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering golden light over silk gowns and tailored suits that cost more than my father's entire estate. Everyone looked like they belonged in a painting of aristocratic elegance. Everyone except me. I stood near the refreshment table, my fingers clutching a crystal glass of sparkling cider I hadn't asked for and wouldn't drink. My dress, a pale lavender thing my stepmother had chosen, felt like a costume. It was too loose at the shoulders, too tight at the waist, the color washing out what little warmth my skin held. She'd said it made me look presentable, which I'd learned was her code for barely acceptable. A soft sigh escaped me as I stared into the effervescent drink. I wished I were anywhere but here, anywhere but this palace of whispers and judging stares. "You're standing in the light again." The voice behind me was sharp as shattered crystal, smooth as poisoned honey. I turned slowly, already knowing who I would see. Serafina, my stepsister, glided toward me in a gown the color of crushed rubies. Her midnight hair cascaded over bare, powdered shoulders, and her smile held the particular, practiced cruelty she reserved just for me. Behind her, her two constant shadows followed, Isadora with her calculating emerald eyes, and Lilith, who always looked bored unless someone was suffering. "I wasn't," I started to say, my voice barely a whisper, but Serafina cut me off with a light, tinkling laugh that deliberately turned nearby heads. "Of course you weren't. You never mean to do anything, do you, Elara?" She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a theatrical whisper that somehow carried across the polished marble floor. "But I suppose it doesn't matter where you stand tonight. You could be center stage under the largest chandelier, and he still wouldn't see you." I didn't need to ask who he was. The knowledge was a living thing in the room, humming in the very air we breathed. Everyone in this hall, in this territory, in every pack for 500 miles, knew who would arrive tonight. Alpha King Kaelen Thorne. The name itself carried a physical weight, like the pressure before a storm. 3 years ago, he'd united the fractured, warring packs of the eastern reaches through a combination of strategic genius and raw, undeniable power. Some said he was the strongest alpha born in 3 centuries. Others whispered he was cursed, that something ancient and icy lived behind those piercing sapphire eyes. Tonight he was here to choose, not a mate in the romantic sense. That notion belonged to fireside tales and old songs. No, the Alpha King needed a strategic alliance, a political bond to solidify his rule over the Western clans, and every unmated woman of noble status had been summoned to this gathering, dressed and primped like jewels in a display case. "He'll never look at you," Serafina continued, her smile widening as Isadora and Lilith flanked her, forming a wall of silk and spite. "You're not his type. You're not anyone's type, really." The words should have carved into me. They were designed to, but over the years I'd grown a kind of scar tissue on my heart where soft skin used to be. My father had remarried 2 years after my mother's passing, bringing Serafina and her mother Vivian into our home. Since then, I'd learned to swallow humiliation like bitter medicine, necessary if unpleasant for survival. "I'm not here to be chosen," I said quietly, trying to step around them. Lilith shifted, blocking my path with a delicate flutter of her feathered fan. "Then why are you here?" "Oh, that's right, because your father insisted. How embarrassing for him, having to parade you around like you're worth something." "It's like putting a dandelion in a vase of orchids," Isadora added with a theatrical sigh. "It just makes the orchids look more exquisite." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted the sharp tang of copper. My father had insisted I attend, though his eyes had skittered away from me when he'd said it. These days, he rarely looked me directly. I was a living reminder of my mother and perhaps of his own failure to maintain our pack's standing after her death. We'd fallen in rank, becoming little more than minor nobility clinging to a fading name. This invitation was likely a courtesy, a nod to what we used to be rather than what we'd become. "Excuse me," I whispered, the words ash in my mouth. I shouldered past them, my lavender skirts whispering against Lilith's reds. Seraphina's laughter followed me, a chilling melody as I wove through clusters of beautiful people, discussing trade routes, border skirmishes, and power. I caught fragments of conversation, speculation about which family the Alpha King would favor, debates about resources and military strength. My chest tightened, making it hard to draw a full breath, as if I were breathing through thick velvet. I needed air. I needed silence. My eyes found a shadowed archway leading to a side corridor, part of the original stone fortress upon which this glittering palace had been built. Slipping through it, I left the noise and light behind, grateful for the sudden, cool quiet. The corridor was narrow, lit with flickering sconces. I pressed my palm against the rough, cool stone and closed my eyes. "You are stronger than you know, my moonbeam." My mother's voice, a faint echo from memory, brushed against my heart. She used to tell me that after difficult days, when other children mocked my too pale hair, my quiet nature, my preference for the company of books over crowds. Different is not less, never forget that. But different felt like less when you were constantly, relentlessly reminded of it. A sudden, profound shift in the atmosphere pulled me from my thoughts. It was not a sound, but a feeling, a drop in pressure, a collective intake of breath from the grand hall. The murmuring ceased, replaced by an expectant, vibrating hush. He was here. I should have stayed in the corridor. I should have waited until the formalities began and I could slip away entirely, unseen. But a treacherous, self-destructive curiosity pulled me back to the archway. I had to see, just once, I had to see the man who held so many futures in his hands. Peering from the shadows, I saw the crowd had parted, forming a wide aisle from the great doors to the center of the hall. At the far end stood a group of men, but my gaze went immediately to the one in front. Alpha King Kaelen Thorne was taller than I'd imagined, his shoulders broad with the promise of contained strength. His hair was the color of rich espresso, slightly too long, brushing the collar of his impeccably black formal coat. But it was his face that halted the breath in my lungs. It was all sharp angles and unforgiving lines, as if carved from winter granite by a merciless hand. And his eyes, even from this distance, I could see they were a blue so deep it was nearly violet, like the heart of a glacier. Cold, assessing, utterly detached as they swept across the room. He moved with absolute, unnerving certainty, each step deliberate. The men flanking him seemed like extensions of his will. One was built like a bastion, all muscle and silent vigilance. Another was leaner, with warm brown skin and an expression of sharp intelligence. A third had eyes that scanned the crowd with the focused stillness of a hawk. "Ladies of the Western clans," the Alpha King's voice was deep, textured like velvet over stone, and it carried effortlessly through the vast space without him ever raising it. "I appreciate your presence tonight." His gaze continued its methodical sweep over the assembled women. I watched Seraphina glide forward half a step, her chin lifted, the rubies at her throat catching the light. Around her, other women did the same, a subtle, silent competition of posture and poise. They were sunflowers turning toward a terrifying sun. I remained in the archway, half hidden by a heavy velvet curtain. "The purpose of this gathering," he continued, "is not mere ceremony. I seek an alliance with a Western clan, one secured by the oldest of bonds. What I am looking for," He paused, and for a fleeting second, something like frustration flickered in his eyes, gone so quickly I doubted I'd seen it. "Is not what you might assume." A ripple of confused murmurs spread through the crowd. This was unprecedented. Such events were pure political theater. The Alpha would meet with elders, assess assets and allegiances, make a cold, calculated choice. But there was an edge in his tone, a weariness that suggested this man was enduring a ritual, not engaging in one. "I have spent 3 years forging alliances through treaty and strength," he said, his voice gaining a harder quality. "What I have not found is something simpler, something genuine." His eyes continued their relentless scan of the room, dismissing faces that had spent a lifetime preparing for this moment. I started to ease back into the safety of the corridor, and then his gaze locked onto mine. Time shattered. The noise of the room faded into a distant, meaningless hum. My blood turned to ice, then fire. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare back into those glacial blue eyes that pinned me in place. His expression didn't change. No recognition, no interest, no anger. Nothing. But he was looking at me, actually seeing me, not through me. A second stretched into an eternity. Then the host of the gathering, Elder Cormac of the Western Council, stepped forward to offer formal greetings. The moment broke. I stumbled back into the dark corridor, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. It was nothing, I told myself, pressing a trembling hand to my chest. A random glance. His eyes had been sweeping the room, and my face was simply in their path. It meant nothing, but my skin was buzzing, and my hands would not stop shaking. From the hall, I could hear Elder Cormac's booming voice, the Alpha King's terse replies. The dance would continue for hours. Eventually, he would make his choice or defer it. It had nothing to do with me. Nothing at all. "Elara?" I jumped. My father stood at the corridor entrance, his face pale and drawn with a strain I couldn't name. Disappointment? Dread? "You need to return to the hall," he said, his voice low. "It is disrespectful to hide." "I wasn't hiding," I murmured. "I just needed a moment. The crowd is—" "Elara," his voice held a warning and a deep fatigue. "Your stepmother is already concocting excuses for your absence. Do not make this more difficult than it must be." I wanted to ask him why it mattered, why my presence or absence in a room full of people who deemed me insignificant should cause such concern. But the profound weariness in his eyes stopped me. He had lost so much, his wife, his status, his spirit. Pushing further felt like cruelty. "Very well," I whispered. He gave a single stiff nod and turned, assuming I would follow. I did, forcing my unsteady legs to carry me back toward the light and the noise. But as I reached the entrance, a hand shot out and grasped my wrist, fingers like talons. I turned to find Seraphina, her beautiful face contorted with venom. "I saw that," she hissed, her voice low and vicious. "I saw him look at you." "It was nothing. Seraphina, you stay away from him." Her grip tightened, nails biting into my skin. "Do you understand me? You are an embarrassment, a stain on this family's honor. If you ruin my chances with your pathetic attention-seeking games, I will make you regret every breath you take." She released me with a violent shove that sent me stumbling forward, out of the archway and into the full glare of the grand hall's light. I caught my balance, my face flaming, only to find myself standing directly in the cleared aisle, and Alpha King Kaelen Thorne, who had turned at the slight commotion, was looking at me. Again. This time, he did not look away. "That is... let me see. Yes. Elara Vance, daughter of Lord Alistair Vance of the Mistwood Pack." "Vance," the Alphakin repeated the name, testing its weight. "I do not recall that pack among the principal Western houses." "No, Your Majesty," Cormac paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. "A respected minor house. They have endured challenging seasons in recent years." The dismissal in his tone was a physical slap. We were filler, a name on a list to lend the illusion of inclusivity. The real contenders were women like Seraphina, from families dripping with wealth and bristling with warriors. I see. The Alpha King's gaze had not wavered from me. Bring her here. The world tipped on its axis. I must have misheard. He must have meant someone else, someone near me, someone of consequence. But Elder Cormac was already gesturing frantically to a nearby steward, who scurried toward me with the panicked expression of a man handed a live coal. "Miss Vance," the steward whispered urgently, his eyes wide. "The Alpha King requests your presence." My legs were pillars of stone. The steward's panic visibly escalated. To refuse a direct summons from the Alpha King was unthinkable. It was an insult that could have repercussions far beyond myself. Around me, I felt the weight of hundreds of stares, heavy and incredulous. Seraphina's face had drained of all color before flooding with furious crimson, her mouth a perfect O of shock. My stepmother, Vivian, beside her, looked as if she had swallowed a wasp. Even my father appeared stunned, one hand half raised in an aborting, helpless gesture. The steward touched my elbow gently. "Please, miss, now." Somehow, my feet remembered their function. I moved forward, the crowd parting before me like a sea before a ship's prow. Each step was an effort, as if I waded through deep water. The distance to the Alpha King was perhaps 30 feet. It felt like 30 miles. The hem of my lavender dress caught on the edge of a rug. I stumbled, catching myself clumsily on the back of a nearby chair. Heat scorched my cheeks. Of course I would trip. In front of everyone. In front of him. This was the universe's final joke. The ultimate humiliation before... what? What did he want? To make an example of me for some unseen breach of etiquette? To publicly illustrate the chasm between true prospects and forgotten daughters of fallen houses? I stopped a respectful distance away, my eyes finally dropping to the polished floorboards. My heart thundered in my ears, a frantic drumbeat counting down to some unknown doom. Look at me. It was not a request, it was a command woven with such inherent authority that disobedience felt physically impossible. Slowly, I raised my eyes. First, I saw polished black boots, then tailored trousers of fine wool, a stark white shirt beneath a black formal coat that spoke of severe elegance. Finally, his face. Those sharp angles seemed even more pronounced up close, his jaw set in a firm line, his mouth a slash of stern neutrality. And his eyes. Up close, they were devastating. Not handsome in a conventional way, his features were too harsh, too severe for that. But there was a terrifying magnetism to him, a gravitational pull that made it agony to look away. "What is your name?" he asked, though it had already been given. "Elara, Your Majesty." My voice emerged steadier than I felt, a small miracle. "Elara," he said my name carefully, as if examining a rare artifact. "Why were you hiding in the corridor?" The question, so blunt and personal, threw me completely. I had expected formality, perhaps a perfunctory inquiry about my pack. Not this, not a genuine, disconcerting curiosity. "I was not hiding," I said, then immediately winced internally. One did not contradict an alpha. I merely needed a moment of quiet. The crowd... I trailed off, unable to articulate the crushing weight of their collective judgment. The crowd is overwhelming. Something shifted in his eyes. Not amusement, but a flicker of... recognition? "You do not enjoy gatherings such as this." It was a statement, not a question. "No, Your Majesty," I admitted softly. "Then why did you come?" "My father wished it," I began, then stopped. Blaming my father felt cowardly. It was expected. Expected? He turned the word over as if it were foreign. Behind him, the lean, intelligent man watched our exchange with keen interest. "And do you always do what is expected?" The question was a trap cloaked in simplicity. If I said yes, I was weak, a puppet. If I said no, I was rebellious, difficult. I chose a different path. "I try to do what causes the least trouble," I said, the honesty pulled from me by the intensity of his focus. For the first time, his expression altered. Not a smile, I doubted this man smiled, but a slight, almost imperceptible softening at the corners of his eyes, as if I had surprised him. "An honest answer," he remarked, "a rarity in rooms such as this." He studied me for another long, silent moment, and I forced myself not to fidget under that penetrating scrutiny. I was acutely aware of my appearance, my pale blonde hair escaping its pins, my ill-fitting dress, my utter lack of the polished grace that surrounded us. A dandelion among orchids, indeed. "Tell me, Elara," he said, his tone shifting into something almost conversational, which was somehow more disquieting. "What do you know of the eastern reaches?" The question was another left turn. "Very little, Your Majesty. Only the common knowledge that you unified the packs 3 years past, that the eastern packs are now more secure and prosperous than they have been in generations. That is the official account, the history written for scrolls." He took a half-step closer, close enough that I caught a scent, clean, cold air, and something deeper, like aged leather and distant pine. "But what do you believe? Do you think the Eastern Pacts are better off under unified rule?" This was undoubtedly a test, a loyalty probe, or a search for seditious thought. But in his eyes I saw that flicker again, a profound weariness that seemed at odds with his profound presence. "I think," I said slowly, weighing each word, "that unity often comes with a high price, but I also believe that fractured packs, constantly at each other's throats, cost far more. So yes, better off, even if the path to it was not a gentle one." The massive guard made a soft grunting sound. "Surprise?" The Alpha King's eyes narrowed, but not in anger, in focused interest. "You believe my methods were harsh. I believe you did what you felt was necessary to prevent greater bloodshed," I corrected quietly. "There is a distinction." "Is there?" "I hope so." A silence settled between us, but it was not the tense, waiting silence of the hall. It was contemplative. It was surreal standing here having a philosophical discussion with the most powerful alpha in living memory, while an audience of nobles watched in stunned confusion. This was not the script. "Elder Cormac," the Alpha King said, not looking away from me.
"Clear the hall." The elderly man blinked. "Your Majesty?" "Everyone out, except the council elders. We will reconvene tomorrow. I have matters to consider." Chaos erupted instantly. Voices rose in protest and confusion. Elder Cormac looked as though he might argue but thought better of it. Women who had spent a fortune and a lifetime preparing for this night stood frozen in disbelief. Vivian's face purpled with suppressed rage. Seraphina looked as if she might actually shatter from sheer fury. Through the tumult, the Alpha King's gaze remained fixed on me. "Not you," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear it over the rising din. "You stay." My father materialized at my side, his voice a strained whisper. "Your Majesty, surely my daughter should—" "Lord Vance," the Alpha King's tone could have frozen the sun. "Your daughter remains, unless you wish to debate me on this." My father recoiled as if struck, his face ashen. He looked at me once, a complex storm of emotion in his eyes, fear, confusion, a dawning hope, then allowed himself to be swept away in the tide of departing guests. Within minutes, the vast hall stood nearly empty, save for the Alpha King, his 3 companions, Elder Cormac and 2 other council members, and me. Alone in the center of the cavernous space, I felt more exposed than ever. The Alpha King turned fully to me, and that almost smile touched his lips again. "Now," he said, "let us talk." Chapter 3: Whispers by Candlelight. The conversation that followed was nothing I could have ever imagined. The Alpha King, Kaelen, as he instructed me to call him once the last of the council members had departed with bewildered bows, did not ask about territory sizes or warrior counts. He did not inquire about bloodlines or trade agreements. Instead, he gestured to one of the high-backed chairs near the cold fireplace. "Sit," he said, and it was less a command and more an invitation. As I settled nervously on the edge of the seat, he took the one opposite, his movements efficient and controlled. His 3 companions arranged themselves at a respectful distance. The mountain, whom he called Rylan, the intelligent one, named Theron, and the watchful one, called Jackson. They did not sit, but their postures relaxed marginally, though their eyes missed nothing. "You read." Kaelen's statement hung in the air between us. "I saw it in your choice of words, precise, considered." I do, I corrected myself, swallowing. "History, philosophy, sometimes poetry." He nodded once, a sharp dip of his chin. "Good. Most of the people in this room tonight have only read ledgers and battle plans." We spoke then, as the candles burned lower, casting long, dancing shadows on the marble floor. He asked my opinion on the governance philosophies in a historical text I'd mentioned. I, tentatively at first, then with growing passion, gave it to him. He listened with a focus I had never experienced, as if my every word held weight. In turn, he spoke of the eastern reaches not as a conqueror, but as a weary guardian. He told of inheriting a land fractured by generations of feuds, of the 3 brutal months where he stitched it together through a combination of shrewd diplomacy and unavoidable force. That force, he admitted in a low voice, haunted his sleep. "I am 28, he said, staring into the empty fireplace as if seeing ghosts in the ashes. "Yet I feel centuries old." The honesty was disarming, dangerous. I found myself speaking in kind. I told him of my mother, her laughter that used to fill our halls, her love for growing things. I spoke of the silent emptiness after she was gone, of my father retreating into a shell of grief, of Vivian and Seraphina filling our home with a cold, glittering hostility. I confessed my habit of making myself small, of finding refuge in stories where heroes and heroines faced dragons I could never hope to confront. When I faltered, feeling that I had said too much, he merely nodded. "Different is not less," he quoted softly, and my heart clenched. "You remember." "I remember everything that matters," he said, his blue eyes capturing mine. The sky outside the tall windows began to lighten from deepest black to the soft gray of pre-dawn. Kaelen stood, the movement fluid and powerful. "Tomorrow evening there is a dinner with the full Western Council. I wish for you to attend." I am not sure that is appropriate, Kaelen. I do not belong at such meetings." "No," he agreed, a faint, almost imperceptible curve to his lips. "You belong somewhere far more interesting than a council dinner. But I require an observer, someone who will tell me which of those polished elders is lying through his teeth. I believe you see more than most." That was 3 days ago. Now I stood before a full-length mirror in a borrowed guest chamber of Elder Cormac's estate, trying to reconcile the stranger in the glass with the girl I knew. The dress draped over the chair was not mine. It had arrived this morning, borne by a silent servant with a note in a sharp, decisive script. "Wear this. Pay no mind to any who question it. K." The gown was a deep emerald green, simple in its elegant lines, crafted from a silk that shimmered subtly in the light. It fit as if it had been made for me, embracing my form in a way my own clothes never had. My hair had been arranged by a maid who appeared at my door, sent from his household. The pale waves were swept up in a graceful, secure style, with a few delicate tendrils framing my face. I looked, not like Seraphina, breathtaking and dramatic. I looked composed, present, like someone who had a right to be seen. A firm knock sounded at the door. I opened it to find Theron, the advisor, his dark, intelligent eyes appraising me with clinical interest. "He sent me to escort you," he stated. "A warning. You are about to enter a den of wolves who are very perplexed by your continued presence."
"That makes 2 of us," I murmured. A faint smile touched Theron's lips. "He finds you intriguing. Do not ask me why. I have served him for 6 years and his instincts still surprise me half the time, but his instincts are rarely right." He paused, the smile fading. "Rarely. That is not comforting. It is not meant to be. Come." The dining hall was intimate compared to the grand hall, but no less intimidating. A long, ancient oak table dominated the room, already surrounded by council members and their families. Elder Cormac sat at the foot, my father halfway down, looking profoundly uncomfortable beside Vivian, whose smile was a brittle mask. Seraphina sat directly across, a vision in gold silk, her eyes like chips of obsidian. When they landed on me entering with Theron, they narrowed into venomous slits. Kaelen stood at the head of the table, speaking quietly with an elderly woman I didn't recognize. In the candlelight, he seemed slightly less like a figure carved from ice, the stark planes of his face softened by the golden glow.
Then he glanced up and saw me. The conversation around the table did not cease, but it stuttered, fractured by the force of collective attention. Eyes tracked my progress as Theron led me not to a lower seat, but to the empty chair positioned immediately to Kaelen's right, the place of honor, or the place of greatest scrutiny. "Elara," Kaelen said, and his voice held a warmth entirely absent when he'd greeted the others. "Thank you for joining us." "Thank you for the invitation, Your Majesty," I managed, lowering myself into the proffered seat, hyper-aware of every gaze boring into me. He had held the chair for me himself, a gesture so shocking a palpable wave of disbelief rippled through the room. Dinner commenced with ritualistic formality. Servants presented and cleared courses with silent efficiency. Wine was poured and conversation meandered through safe, tedious topics: the unseasonably warm weather, the upcoming harvest festivals, the quality of the local vineyards. But beneath the polished veneer of civility, a current of raw tension thrummed. I stayed quiet as Kaelen had requested and observed. It was not difficult. Elder Cormac's laughter was a beat too loud when discussing border patrols. A sharp-faced councilman named Aldrich kept steering the conversation toward the mineral wealth in his pack's hills. Vivian interjected with pointed comments about lineage and suitable matches, each word a carefully aimed dart in my direction. "Your Majesty," she said during a lull, her voice dripping with saccharine concern, "forgive my forwardness, but many here are curious about your intentions regarding the Western Alliance. There are so many exceptional young women from established families." Her eyes darted to Seraphina, then back to me, the comparison stark and cruel. "I am certain you will wish to weigh all options with the utmost care." "I always do," Kaelen replied mildly, slicing into his roast, "which is why I value a variety of perspectives." "Of course," Vivian pressed on, undeterred, "though some perspectives are naturally more informed than others, experience and pedigree do carry weight in such momentous decisions." Seraphina seized the opening, leaning forward, her gold gown shimmering. "Father always says that strength calls to strength, that a true alpha requires a partner who can stand as his equal in power and presence." Her smile towards Kaelen was a masterpiece of calculated charm. "Not everyone is forged for such heights." The unspoken words, like Elara, hung in the air. Heat crept up my neck, but I kept my expression serene, my eyes on my plate. This was my old skill, the art of becoming a ghost at the feast. But Kaelen set down his knife and fork with a precise click that silenced the table. "A fascinating notion," he said, his voice deceptively soft. "In my experience, those who feel the need to loudly proclaim their strength are often masking a weakness. True power is quiet, it is assured, it does not require an audience." Seraphina's brilliant smile faltered. Across the table, my father closed his eyes briefly. "And as for partnership," Kaelen continued, his gaze sweeping the assembled faces before returning to rest on me,
I have found the most valuable alliances are often built not with the loudest voice, but with the clearest vision. Substance, I find, outshines spectacle every time. My breath caught in my throat. He couldn't mean... No, this was political maneuvering, a defense of a guest. It signified nothing. But beneath the shelter of the long table, I felt the brief, firm press of his hand against mine, a touch of solidarity so fleeting I might have imagined, except I hadn't imagined the jolt that traveled up my arm, or the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly before he returned his attention to his meal. The remainder of the dinner passed in a haze. The atmosphere had shifted irrevocably. Glances thrown my way now held calculation instead of dismissal, wary curiosity instead of contempt. I caught Theron watching from further down the table, a faint approving tilt to his head. Later, as guests drifted toward a parlor for cordials, Kaelen's hand found my elbow. "Walk with me," he said, his voice low. It was not a request. We slipped through a servant's door into the estate's walled gardens. The night air was cool and sweet with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and damp earth. Paper lanterns glowed along the gravel paths, illuminating manicured hedges and sleeping flower beds. For several minutes we walked in silence, the sounds of the party fading behind us, replaced by the chirrup of crickets and the distant howl of an owl. "You are angry," Kaelen stated, finally. "I'm not," I protested automatically. "Yes, you are. You are simply exceptionally proficient at concealing it." He stopped walking, turning to face me. In the soft lantern light, the harsh lines of his face seemed less severe, the blue of his eyes darker, like a deep lake. "Your stepmother and stepsister spent the entirety of that meal attempting to diminish you, and you absorbed it without a word. What would you have had me do?" The words came out sharper than intended. "Create a scene? Defend myself and prove their point, that I am out of my depth, that I do not belong? I learned long ago that fighting back only gives their words more power. That is not strength, Elara. That is endurance. Perhaps endurance is the only strength I have." He studied me for a long, silent moment, then reached out. His fingers brushed a stray lock of hair from my cheek, the touch so gentle it stole my breath. "What if you did not have to merely endure anymore?" "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that 3 nights ago I entered a room full of performances, and the only genuine person I found was seeking shelter in a stone corridor." His voice dropped, taking on a rough quality. "I'm saying every conversation since has felt like an echo, except when I speak with you. I'm saying, Your Majesty." Ryland's voice, uncharacteristically urgent, cut through the night. He emerged onto the path, his massive form moving with startling speed. "Riders from the eastern border, we must depart immediately." Kaelen's demeanor shifted in an instant. The faint softness vanished, replaced by the cold, focused authority of the Alpha King. "Report. Skirmish. Deliberate provocation. Details are unclear, but your presence is required, now." I took a step back, understanding dawning. This interlude, whatever it was over. Duty, vast and unyielding, called him away. But Kaelen's hand closed around mine, preventing my retreat. "Elara, I must go, but this conversation is not concluded." He released my hand to pull something from the inner pocket of his coat. A small, cool object was pressed into my palm. I looked down. It was a pendant on a fine silver chain, a delicate howling wolf carved from pale moonstone. "Keep this," he said, his voice firm. "It was my mother's. She gave it to me when I was a boy, for protection." "I cannot accept this," I whispered, staring at the ethereal stone wolf glowing in the lantern light. "It is too precious." "Keep it safe for me," he insisted, his fingers closing mine over the pendant. "I will return for it, and for you." Before I could form a response, he was striding back toward the estate with Rylan, his figure disappearing into the shadows. I stood alone in the perfumed darkness, the moonstone wolf a cool, solid weight in my hand, my heart a chaotic drum against my ribs. Behind me, gravel crunched. I turned to see Serafina step from behind a towering hedge, her beautiful face a mask of pure, undiluted rage. "You think you're special?" she hissed, advancing. "You think his attention means anything? You're a distraction, Elara, a novelty. The moment a real crisis appears, he forgets you. He is an Alpha King. His world is power and war. Why would he ever truly choose a mouse who hides in libraries?" She laughed, but the sound was brittle, desperate. "You're not strong enough. You never will be. You're the girl who flinches at loud noises. You think that is what a queen looks like?" Each word was a needle expertly placed to pierce old insecurities, and they did. Doubt, cold and familiar, seeped into my bones. She was right, wasn't she? This was a beautiful, fleeting dream. Men like Kaelen built empires with women like Serafina at their side, not with forgotten daughters who found solace in books. But my fingers tightened around the moonstone pendant, its smooth surface a tangible anchor. "Perhaps you're correct," I said, my voice quiet but clear in the still night. "Perhaps I am not what anyone expects. Perhaps I am a distraction." I lifted my chin, meeting her furious gaze. "But he entrusted me with this, not you." Serafina's face blanched with fury. "You little—" "Elara?" "Serafina." My father's voice was weary as he approached from the path. "Come inside, both of you. People are beginning to talk." "Of course," I said softly, the bitterness faint on my tongue. "We mustn't have people talking." I walked past them both, my head held high despite the tremor in my hands. Back inside, Theron found me near the grand staircase. "Kaelen asked me to ensure you return to your chambers safely," he said. Then, his voice dropping, "He does not part with his mother's treasures lightly, for what it is worth." I nodded, unable to speak around the sudden tightness in my throat. That night, in the unfamiliar bed, I held the moonstone wolf up to the sliver of moonlight coming through the window. It seemed to glow with an inner light, the carving exquisite in its detail. I could imagine a young Kaelen, before the weight of kingdoms settled on his shoulders, clutching this stone for comfort. "I will return for it, and for you." I wanted more than anything to believe him, but hope was a dangerous, fragile thing. Still, I fell asleep with the pendant clasped tightly in my hand, and for the first time in a very long time, my dreams were not of shadows, but of a pair of steady, sapphire blue eyes. Chapter 4. The Waiting. 2 weeks passed without a word, 14 days of existing in a strange, suspended state within Elder Cormac's estate. I was treated with a confused, wary deference, no longer dismissed outright, but not embraced either. I was a question mark in a world that demanded definitive answers. The other noble daughters, their hopes dashed or deferred, had largely departed, but my father, after a tense, silent conversation with Vivienne, had decided we would remain. "Just for a little while longer," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "Just in case." Serafina made those 2 weeks an exquisite torture. She was a master of subtle cruelty. A book I was reading would go missing only to be found later with its pages warped by damp. My walking shawl would be accidentally stained with berry juice. She held court in the solarium, her laughter like shattering glass, as she whispered loudly with Isadora and Lilith about the Alpha King's obvious reconsideration, about how some people simply couldn't grasp when they were not wanted. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I had expected the silence, the abandonment. It was the natural order reasserting itself. Men like Kaelen did not choose women like me. The interlude in the garden, the moonstone pendant, they were anomalies, moments of kindness from a man burdened with duty. They were not promises. Yet every night I held the cool moonstone and remembered the intensity in his eyes, the rough warmth of his voice when he said my name, the solid feel of his hand over mine. On the 15th morning, as I sat in the estate's library attempting to lose myself in a history of the Eastern Witches, trying, perhaps foolishly, to understand the man who had vanished, the doors flew open. Rylan stood there, his formidable frame filling the doorway, his expression grim. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice a low rumble, "you must come with me, now." My book slipped from my numb fingers. What has happened? Is the Alpha King... "He lives," Ryland said quickly, "but he has asked for you. There's a carriage waiting. Gather what you need for a journey of several days." "I don't understand." "Neither do I," Ryland admitted, a flicker of something like concern in his steadfast eyes. "But when the Alpha King gives an order, I follow it. Are you coming?" I should have been cautious. I should have demanded details, sought my father, questioned everything. But the urgency in Ryland's tone, the uncharacteristic tension in his broad shoulders, told me this was serious. This was not a social summons. "Give me 5 minutes," I said. I raced to my room, throwing necessities into a small bag with no thought to what I grabbed, pausing only to securely tuck the moonstone pendant into the inner pocket of my dress. On my return, I nearly collided with my father in the corridor. "Elara, where are you going?" His eyes went from my bag to Ryland waiting like a stone sentinel at the end of the hall. Understanding, followed by a deep paternal fear, dawned on his face. "You're leaving with him?" "I don't know," I said truthfully. "The Alpha King sent for me." "The Alpha King," my father corrected automatically, then shook his head, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Elara, be wary. The world he inhabits, it is dangerous, especially for someone with your gentle heart. Someone like me, always someone like me, too soft, too quiet, too ill-suited for the harsh realities of power." "I know," I said softly, "but I am going anyway." Something flickered in his eyes, perhaps surprise or the ghost of a long-lost pride. He nodded once, a stiff, almost imperceptible movement, and stepped aside. The carriage ride was long and silent, carrying us north and east, into landscapes that grew wilder and more rugged with each passing mile. Ryland rode up top with the driver, while Jackson, who had been waiting inside the carriage, sat across from me. His watchful eyes, the color of a forest pool, missed nothing. "You may ask," he said, after an hour of nothing but the clatter of wheels and horses' hooves. "Ask what? What occurred on the border? Why he sent for you?" Jackson leaned back, his posture deceptively relaxed. "Do you wish to know?" I did, desperately, but I also feared the answer. "I fear to overstep," I said carefully. Jackson's mouth quirked. "A diplomatic response. You are learning." He was silent for another long moment, watching the pine forests roll by. "There was an ambush, small but professional. They knew his route, his security detail, his vulnerabilities. We repelled them, but..." He paused, choosing his words with precision. "Kaelen was injured, not mortally, but significantly. And when he regained consciousness after the healers had done their work, the first name he spoke was yours." My chest constricted, a vice of fear and something else, a terrifying, fragile warmth. "Why?" "That," Jackson said, fixing me with his penetrating gaze, "is what I would like to know. I have known him since we were boys. I have watched him carve order from chaos with will and steel. He does not let people close. He does not ask for comfort. He believes he does not deserve it." He leaned forward slightly. "So why you?" It was the question that had haunted my own thoughts for a fortnight. "I don't know," I whispered. "I am not remarkable. I am not a warrior or a strategist or..." "No," Jackson agreed bluntly. "You are not. But perhaps that is precisely the point." He settled back against the seat, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps he is weary of people who want something from the Alpha King. Perhaps he just needs someone who sees Kaelen." The remainder of the journey passed in a contemplative silence. We arrived not at a palace, but at a fortified outpost nestled in a steep valley. It was all function: high stone walls, sturdy timber buildings, guards stationed at precise intervals. This was a place built for defense, not display. Theron met us at the heavy iron gates, his usual composure frayed at the edges. "Elara," he said, relief evident in his tone. "Thank you for coming. He has been..." He stopped, reconsidering. "He needs to see you." "Is he all right?" "Physically, he will heal. The rest..."
Heroine shook his head. "Come." He led me through stone corridors that smelled of wood smoke, herbs, and cold stone, up a narrow staircase to a heavy oak door. He is inside. A warning. He is not himself. The attack shook him more than he will admit. Kaelen does not handle vulnerability with grace. Heroine met my eyes. "Be patient." I nodded, my heart thundering against my ribs. Heroine knocked once, then pushed the door open. "I found her," he called into the room. Then, to me, quieter, "Good luck." The chamber beyond was starkly utilitarian. A wide bed, a desk strewn with maps and reports, a fireplace where low flames crackled. And sitting in a chair by the narrow window, his shirt open at the neck revealing stark white bandages wrapped around his chest and shoulder, was Kaelen. He looked up as I entered, and the expression that crossed his face, raw, unguarded, profound relief, stole the very air from the room. "Elara," he said, and his voice was rough, fractured on my name. I crossed the room without thought, dropping my bag, my fears, everything. When I reached him, he reached out, his hand closing around my wrist, his grip strong yet trembling. He didn't pull me into an embrace, but he held on as if I were the only solid thing in a crumbling world. For a long moment we stayed like that, connected by that single point of contact, silence speaking volumes. "I'm sorry," he said, finally, his gaze fixed on our joined hands. "I should have sent word, should have... But the attack, and then the recovery, and the suspicion, I couldn't stop thinking of you, couldn't stop worrying that you'd believe I'd forgotten, that you'd listen to the poison your stepsister was undoubtedly speaking. She said you'd gotten bored," I admitted quietly, "that I was just a passing amusement." His jaw tightened, a muscle flickering. "I should have her removed from the territory the moment I first saw her sneer at you." "Kaelen, I am serious." His hand shifted, his fingers lacing through mine. "You are not an amusement. You are not a distraction. You are..." He stopped, searching for words, his blue eyes stormy. "Do you know what it is to be surrounded by voices yet hear nothing of value? To have 100 advisors and trust none of them with your true thoughts?" "I know what it is to be surrounded yet feel utterly alone," I said softly. "That is its own kind of solitude. You are not alone to me." His voice was fierce, fervent. "From the moment I saw you in that corridor trying to become part of the wall, you were the only true thing in a hall of mirrors. Every moment since has only confirmed it. You want nothing from me but honesty. You don't posture or plot. You are simply you." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, hot and sudden. "I don't know how to be anything else." "Good. Don't ever learn." He brought my hand to his forehead, resting it there for a moment, his eyes closed. "I need that. I need you." The words hung between us, immense and terrifying. This was no longer about political observation or casual interest. This was a confession, stark and real. "The attack," I said, needing to ground us, to understand. "Jackson said it was planned, that they knew your movements." Kaelen's expression darkened, the vulnerability shuddering behind a mask of cold calculation. "Someone close is betraying us, someone with access to council chambers and military dispatches. We've suspected for months. The ambush was their boldest move yet." He released my hand and moved to the desk with only a slight stiffness. "That is why I need you here. I trust no one in the Western contingent at the moment. Except," he turned to face me, "except you. I want you to help me find the traitor. I need someone observant, someone they will not perceive as a threat." I looked at the maps, at the web of lines and notations. "You want me to spy? I want you to observe, to listen, to tell me what you see and hear." He walked back to me, his gaze intent. "And before you agree, you must understand, this is not a game. If they realize what you are doing, you will be in danger. I can protect you, but the risk is real. I will do it." The words left my lips without hesitation. He blinked, taken aback. "Just like that?" You asked for my help. You trusted me with this. I gestured at the room, at his injury, at the raw honesty between us. Yes, just like that. For a long moment, he just stared at me, as if seeing me clearly for the very first time. Then he reached out, his hand cupping my cheek, his thumb brushing just below my eye. "Stay," he said, his voice low. "Not just for this. Stay here, where I can ensure your safety, where I can—" His thumb stilled. "Where I can see you each day and know this is not a dream." "Okay," I whispered, leaning into his touch, the decision settling into my bones with a rightness I couldn't deny. "Yes, I will stay." The breath he let out was one of profound relief. That night, after he'd shown me to a small adjacent chamber, after a simple meal shared with Theron, Rylan, and Jackson, where I was treated with a new, cautious respect, after hours of discussing the patterns of betrayal, I lay in the narrow bed. The moonstone pendant was warm against my skin. I had gone from invisible to indispensable, from hiding in libraries to being entrusted with secrets that could determine the fate of territories, from believing I was meant for nothing but silence to being asked to listen for the whispers of treason. A soft sound at the door made me sit up. Kaelen stood in the doorway, back in his shirt, his hair tousled, looking more uncertain than I had ever seen him. "I cannot sleep," he admitted, his voice gravelly. "The dreams, they are of the ambush, of steel in the dark. May I?" I pulled back the woolen blanket in answer. He crossed the room and lay down beside me on the narrow bed, careful to keep distance between us, a line of propriety he was clearly determined to maintain. But I turned onto my side, facing him. In the darkness, I found his hand and held it. "You are safe here," I whispered. He let out a long, slow breath, his fingers tightening around mine. "Thank you," he murmured into the dark, "for staying, for being my harbor in this endless storm." We fell asleep like that, our hands clasped, two lonely souls finding an anchor in the quiet of the night. The game was now truly afoot, and I was no longer a spectator. I was a player, and I had everything to lose. Chapter 5: The Web of Whispers. The next 3 weeks unfolded with the strange, suspended quality of a dream woven from shadows and suspicion. My days took on a new, purposeful rhythm. Kaelen, with Theron's deft political maneuvering, had me installed as a cultural liaison to the Western clans, a vague, harmless-sounding title that granted me access to council sessions, strategy meetings, and the endless social gatherings that were the lifeblood of diplomacy. I was a ghost with a notebook, a silent presence in the corner of stone chambers and sunlit halls. The Western lords and elders initially paid me little mind. I was Lord Thance's quiet daughter, the peculiar girl the Alpha King had taken a passing interest in, perhaps out of pity, a non-threat, a decorative piece, which was precisely what Kaelen needed them to think. And so I observed. I watched Elder Cormac's fingers drum a nervous rhythm on the oak table whenever supply routes to the eastern border were discussed. I noted how Councilman Aldrich always found a reason to leave the room just before patrol schedules were finalized, returning just after. I saw the fleeting, knowing glances exchanged between a minor lord named Grievel and a southern trader who seemed to have unusually free access to the fort. I recorded it all in a small, leather-bound journal Kaelen had given me, using a subtle code of my own devising. Nights were spent in his private chambers, before the fire. Sometimes we pored over my notes together, his keen military mind connecting dots I had only seen as unrelated points. Sometimes he worked through dispatches, his brow furrowed, while I read quietly in an armchair, the companionable silence between us a balm. And sometimes, when the weight of leadership or the memory of the ambush pressed too hard, he would simply sit and talk about his mother, about his visions for a truly unified realm, about the books he wished he had time to read. We did not speak again of the words uttered in the garden or upon my arrival. They hung between us, a promise too fragile to examine directly. But his trust was evident in every shared document, every confidential thought. His hand would find mine under the council table in a brief, grounding touch. His eyes would seek me out across a crowded room, a silent check-in. And when we walked the battlements at dusk, he listened to my observations with a focus that made me feel like the most important person in his world. I was falling in love with him. It was a quiet, terrifying, undeniable truth that had taken root in my heart. I loved his fierce intelligence, his unexpected vulnerability, the weary honor that drove him. I loved the man behind the crown, and the realization was as exhilarating as it was terrifying. On the 22nd day, the trap was set. A special council was called, involving all Western leaders present at the fort and Kaelen's inner circle. The stated agenda: revising trade agreements for the coming winter. The true purpose: to force the trader's hand. I took my usual seat in the corner, my journal open on my lap, my posture of detached observation. Kaelen stood at the head of the heavy table, commanding the room with his mere presence. As outlined in the documents before you, he began, his voice cool and authoritative. The new patrol rotations for the Silver Vein Pass will commence at the end of this week. This should alleviate the congestion on the northern route. I watched Councilman Aldrich lean forward, his eyes scanning the map with a hunger that had nothing to do with logistics. I saw his hand dip into his coat pocket, fingers tightening for something. I saw his gaze dart to the door, calculating travel time. Theron, standing behind Kaelen's chair, caught my eye. I gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Actually, Kaelen continued, his tone shifting to one of casual afterthought. Upon further consideration, we will implement the Silver Vein rotations tonight. Immediate reinforcement is required. Aldrich's stylus froze mid-word on his parchment. His face went carefully, dangerously blank. Tonight? Elder Cormac sputtered. That is highly irregular, Your Majesty. Our men need preparation, notification. The necessary parties have already been discreetly informed. Kaelen cut him off, his voice like ice. The temperature in the stone-walled room plummeted. Confusion and unease rippled through the assembled men. Aldrich stood abruptly, his chair scraping harshly against the flagstones. 1,000 pardons, Your Majesty, but a sudden illness. I must retire. Sit down, Councilman. Kaelen's voice cracked through the air like a whip.
I must retire. Sit down, Councilman. Kaelen's voice cracked through the air like a whip. We are not yet finished. Aldrich remained standing, his hand now clearly gripping something within his pocket. His eyes, wild and desperate, scanned the room and landed on me. In that instant, I saw his calculation shift. I was the weakest link, the closest target, the one whose loss would cause the most disruption to Kaelen. It happened with nightmarish speed. He didn't head for the door blocked by Ryland's immense form. He lunged across the space between us. One moment he was at the table, the next his arm was locked around my throat from behind, dragging me from my chair. The cold edge of a dagger pressed against the base of my neck. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. "Nobody moves," Aldrich snarled, his breath hot and panicked against my ear. "Or the girl dies." The room froze into a tableau of shock, but my eyes were fixed on Kaelen. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. All color drained from his face, leaving his features stark as marble. But his eyes, they ignited with a feral blue fire rage I had never seen. Every muscle in his body coiled, vibrating with lethal promise. "Let her go." The words were barely a whisper, yet they carried the force of an avalanche. "Release her, and your death will be swift." "I think not," Aldrich sneered, his voice trembling with adrenaline. "I walk out of these gates free and clear, or you can explain to your precious Western allies how you let this little nobody die for your pride. Which matters more, King, your rule or one insignificant girl?" The dagger bit deeper, a sharp, stinging pain. A warm trickle of blood traced a path down my collarbone. The pain was a clarion call, cutting through the fog of terror. And in that crystalline moment of fear and pain, something within me broke free. I had spent a lifetime being small, being quiet, being the girl who accepted cruelty because she believed she deserved no better. But Kaelen had seen something else. He had trusted me with his kingdom's secrets, with his own guarded heart. He had looked at me as if I were made of starlight, not dust. I was not insignificant. The moonstone pendant lay cool against my skin, beneath my dress, a token of protection, a symbol of faith. "You're right," I rasped, my voice strained but clear in the dead silence. "I am nobody. I am forgettable." I met Kaelen's blazing eyes across the room, saw the frantic fear in them warring with the fury. "But I am also the one holding your arm. And I have read every book on anatomy in my father's library." With every ounce of strength I possessed, I drove my elbow backward into the soft junction below his ribs. His grip loosened with a pained grunt. I twisted, bringing my heel down hard on his instep. The dagger clattered to the stone floor. Then Rylan was there, a mountain of righteous fury, hauling Aldrich away as if he were a sack of grain. Jackson secured his arms behind his back with brutal efficiency. And Kaelen was there, his hands on my shoulders, his eyes frantically searching my face, his fingers coming away from my neck stained red. "You're hurt." "It's shallow," I managed, though my legs were trembling. "I'm all right." "You are not all right." His voice was rough, laced with a fear that mirrored my own. "He could have killed you." I pressed a hand over the small cut, staunching the blood. "But he didn't. I'm here. I'm safe." The fort's healer, a no-nonsense older woman, pushed Kaelen gently aside to examine the wound. As I'd said, it was superficial. Clean, bandage, rest. Yet Kaelen hovered like a storm contained in human form, his gaze never leaving me, vibrating with violence barely leashed. Aldrich, restrained and raving, hurled accusations and pleas. Theron and the other council members moved to secure evidence, to begin the grim process of interrogation and judgment. But the world had narrowed to Kaelen's ashen face and the terrifying depth of emotion in his eyes. When the healer finished and declared me fit, Kaelen took my hand, his own shockingly cold, and led me from the council chamber. He didn't speak as we navigated the corridors, didn't stop until we were in his private quarters, the heavy oak door shut and barred behind us. Then the dam broke. He turned to me and the control shattered. "Don't," he said, his voice breaking on the word. "Don't you ever do that again." His hands came up to frame my face, his touch desperate. "When he had that blade to you, I would have torn this world apart with my bare hands if he had harmed you." "He did harm me," I said, softly, reaching up to cover his hands with mine. "It's just a scratch." "Elara." His forehead dropped to mine, his breath ragged. "Don't make light of this. Not of this." "Kaelen." I kept my voice steady, my hands holding his to my cheeks. "I am well. We uncovered the snake. It is over." "It is not over." He pulled back just enough to search my eyes, his own swimming with a turmoil that stole my breath. "Elara, I must tell you something. I cannot hold it back any longer. I love you." Time stopped. The very air stilled. "I love you," he repeated, the words pouring out now as if a floodgate had opened. "I love your mind, your quiet courage, the way you see truth where others see only what they wish. I love that you are not dazzled by my title, that you challenge me, that you offer honesty instead of flattery." His voice cracked. "I love everything you are, and when I thought that knife would take you from me, I knew I could not continue this charade. I cannot pretend this is strategy or alliance. It is not. I choose you, Elara Vance, just you. If you will have me, If you will have a king whose life is a web of danger, whose love comes with a crown of thorns." Tears streamed down my face, hot and unchecked. I laughed through them, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy. "You foolish, brilliant man! Of course I will have you. I love you too." The kiss was not one of passion, but of profound relief, of a promise finally spoken. It was tender, reverent, a sealing of vows not yet formally made. When we parted, both breathing as if we'd run for miles, he reached into his pocket. He pulled out not a ring, but a fine, delicate silver chain. From it hung a pendant, a single teardrop sapphire that matched the depths of his eyes. It was not an engagement ring. It was something more personal, more profound. "Wear this," he said, his voice hushed, "so that wherever you go, a piece of my oath, my protection, goes with you."
Marry me, Elara, not for treaties or lands. Marry me because you are my truth. Marry me because my world makes sense only when you are in it. "Yes," I whispered, the word a prayer. "Yes, always yes." He fastened the chain around my neck. The sapphire rested beside the moonstone wolf, cool and perfect against my skin. The conspiracy was unraveled, the traitor caught. But a far greater, more wonderful plot had just been set irrevocably in motion. Our story was no longer one of observation, but of destiny, and it was only just beginning. The days following Aldrich's exposure were a whirlwind of grim activity and shocking revelation. Interrogations, conducted by the relentless Jackson and the methodical Theron, peeled back layers of the conspiracy. Aldrich had not acted alone. He was the western node of a network that reached back into the eastern reaches to a faction of traditionalists who saw Kaelen's unified rule as an abomination, a dilution of their ancient pack sovereignties. They weren't just seeking to destabilize him, they wanted him dead, to shatter the unity and return to the old fractious ways. The news settled over the fort like a pall. Kaelen took it with a stoic silence, but I saw the betrayal cut deeper than any blade. These were not just political opponents, some were sons of men who had fought beside his father. The council meetings now were tense, charged with a paranoia that was both necessary and poisonous. My role evolved. I was no longer just an observer. I was a confidant, a sounding board. Kaelen valued my perspective precisely because it was untainted by generations of pack politics and old grudges. I saw alliances and enmities with fresh eyes, and sometimes that clarity was what he needed. One evening, a week after the incident, we sat in his chambers. A fire fought against the creeping mountain chill. Reports were spread across his desk, but he wasn't looking at them. He was staring into the flames, his profile etched in gold and shadow. "I should send you away," he said, his voice flat, "back to your father's estate, somewhere safe." "Is anywhere truly safe if they want you dead?" I asked quietly, not looking up from the book in my lap. "If they believe harming me hurts you, then my father's house would be no sanctuary." He turned his head, his blue eyes dark. "That is what terrifies me. My love has made you a target." It was the first time he had called it love so plainly since his confession. The word hung between us, beautiful and dangerous. "Then let us be targets together," I said, closing my book and meeting his gaze. "I would rather be in danger by your side than safe and forgotten in the corner." A faint, weary smile touched his lips. "You have never been forgettable, Elara, not to me." He stood and came to kneel beside my chair, taking my hand. "The formal engagement will be announced. It must be, to solidify our standing, to show strength. But it will put you in an even brighter light. The scrutiny will be relentless. Vivienne and Seraphina will—" "I know," I interrupted, a small smile of my own forming. "Let them. They have spent years telling me what I am not. Now I finally know what I am. Yours." His hand tightened around mine. "And I am yours forever."
The formal announcement, when it came, sent shockwaves through both the eastern reaches and the western clans. A carrier hawk brought a tersely worded scroll from my father, expressing not congratulations, but a bewildered acknowledgement. Vivienne and Seraphina, according to Theron's network of informants, had been asked to leave Elder Cormac's estate after Seraphina reportedly shattered an entire set of priceless crystal vases. The reaction among the common people, however, was different. Whispers in the markets and around packfires told of a different story, a romantic tale of a king who saw a queen where others saw a shadow. It gave them hope, a narrative of merit over bloodline that resonated deeply. Preparations began, not just for a wedding, but for war. The exposed conspiracy meant the Shadow War was now out in the open. Kaelen's forces, led by Rylan, began strategic mobilizations. Theron's web of spies stretched further, hunting the remaining threads of the plot. Jackson's vigilance became a constant, palpable presence. Through it all, Kaelen and I stole moments of peace. Walks along the battlements at dusk, where he would point out the constellations and tell me the old pack stories associated with them. Quiet evenings where I would read aloud while he worked, the sound of my voice smoothing the tension from his shoulders. We spoke of the future, not just of security and strategy, but of real hopes. He wanted to establish schools in the remote reaches of his territory. I spoke of restoring neglected archives, of preserving the history he was fighting to protect. We were building a shared dream on a foundation of shared danger. One afternoon, a sealed message arrived for me. It was not via hawk or rider, but delivered by a traveling tinker who vanished before he could be questioned. The parchment was fine, the wax seal unmarked. With trepidation, I broke it open in the privacy of my chamber. The dandelion thinks it can become an oak, but roots grown in shadow cannot hold against the storm. The king's light will burn you to ash, little weed. You will be his ruin. No signature, but I didn't need one. The venom, the floral metaphor, it was Seraphina's poison distilled onto parchment. It was meant to frighten me, to seed doubt, and for a moment it did. The old fears stirred, that I was inadequate, that my presence was a weakness Kaelen could not afford. I held the moonstone wolf and the sapphire pendant in my hand, their combined weight a comfort. Then I took the letter to Kaelen. His face darkened as he read it. "This is not just spite," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "This is a threat. She has aligned herself with our enemies, or they have found her a willing vessel for their malice." "What do we do?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "We use it," he said, crushing the parchment in his fist. "We show them that their threats only strengthen our resolve. The engagement ceremony will be held here at the fort in 1 month's time, and you, my love, will stand beside me, not as a target, but as a standard. Our unity will be our answer." The month that followed was a blur of activity and underlying tension. Dressmakers came from a distant town, their wagons heavily guarded. Provisions for the ceremony and the feast that would follow were stockpiled. Invitations were sent to a carefully vetted list of allies. Security plans were drawn and redrawn. I spent hours with Theron, learning the names, faces, and political leanings of every important guest. I was no longer just Elara Vance. I was learning to be Elara, future queen of the United Territories. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep. The weight of the crown that was not yet on my head felt immense. Slipping from my room, I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and made my way to the small, walled garden within the fort's inner keep. The moon was full, bathing the dormant herb beds in silver light. I didn't hear him approach, but I felt his presence, a calm, solid warmth at my back. "Can't sleep?" Kaelen's voice was soft in the stillness. "Too many thoughts," I admitted, not turning. "What if I am not what they need? What if I fail you?" "You could never fail me," he said, coming to stand beside me. "You see, Elara, I do not need a queen who is a replica of me. I need a queen who is my complement. Where I am hard, you are gentle. Where I see strategy, you see people. Where I am forged in fire, you are rooted in the deep, quiet earth." He turned to face me, taking both hands in his.
Tomorrow, we do not just join our lives, we join our strengths. Our union is the message that true power lies not in domination, but in balance. His words settled the frantic wings of fear in my chest. I looked up at him, at this fierce, complicated man who had chosen me. "I am not afraid," I said, and realized it was true. "With you, I am not afraid." He raised my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. "Then let us go inside. Tomorrow is a day for beginnings, but tonight is ours." We walked back into the fortress, hand in hand. The stone corridors were silent, the torches burning low. At my chamber door, he paused. "Sleep well, my queen. I will see you at the altar." He turned to leave, but I held fast to his hand. "Kaelen?" He looked back. "I love you." The smile that broke across his face was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, unrestrained, full of a joy so deep it transformed his entire being. "And I," he whispered, "love you, more than territory, more than victory, more than my own life, forever." He left then, and I entered my chamber. The doubts were gone, burned away by the certainty of his love and the rightness of our path. Outside, the moon shone down on the fortified valley, on the sleeping guards, on the banners waiting to be unfurled. Tomorrow, we would face our enemies not with fear, but with a united front. The dandelion would meet the storm, and she would not break. She would bend, and she would endure, because her roots were no longer in shadow. They were intertwined with the mountain itself. Chapter 7. The Crown of Promise. Dawn broke over the mountain fortress, not with gentle pastels, but with a clear, brilliant gold that glinted off the snow-capped peaks. The day of the engagement ceremony had arrived. There was a purposeful energy humming through the stone halls, different from the tension of impending battle. This was the buzz of a defiant celebration, a declaration of unity in the face of those who would see it shattered. The dress laid out for me was not the white of traditional bridal garb, nor the rich colors of Seraphina's style. It was a gown of soft dove gray, the color of dawn mist, overlaid with sheer silver netting that shimmered like captured moonlight. It was elegant, strong, and utterly unique, much like the path Kaelen and I were choosing. It fit perfectly. As the maid fastened the last clasp, I looked in the polished bronze mirror. The woman who looked back was not the girl in the ill-fitting lavender dress. Her posture was straight, her gaze steady. The sapphire pendant rested at her throat, the moonstone wolf hidden but felt against her skin. She looked like someone who could stand beside a king. There was a firm knock. Theron entered, resplendent in formal robes of navy and silver. He bowed, a genuine smile touching his usually reserved features. "You look remarkably suitable, my lady." "High praise from you, Theron," I said, smiling back. He offered his arm. "The king awaits, and the entire fort and half the territory, if I'm not mistaken." The ceremony was to be held in the fort's central courtyard, open to the sky. As Theron led me through the corridors, I could hear the murmur of a gathered crowd, soldiers, craftsmen, pack members from the surrounding valleys who had been invited to witness. They fell silent as we emerged into the sunlight. The courtyard had been transformed. Garlands of evergreen and winter berries draped the stone walls. A simple canopy of deep blue fabric had been erected at the far end, and beneath it, standing with Rylan and Jackson at his shoulders, was Kaelen. He wore the formal black of his station, but with a silver cloak clasped at his shoulder, the same silver as the netting on my gown. His eyes found mine instantly, and the intensity in them, that proud, fierce love, nearly stole my breath. The walk to him felt both endless and instantaneous. The eyes of the crowd were on me, but I saw him only. This was not the grand hall of the Crescent Moon Pact. This was a fortress built on strength. This was our truth. I reached the canopy. Theron placed my hand in Kaelen's. His grip was firm, warm, anchoring. Elder Cormac, looking considerably chastened since Aldrich's betrayal, officiated. His voice boomed across the silent courtyard, speaking of alliance, of unity, of the sacred bond between Alpha and Luna that strengthened the pact. But when it came time for our vows, Kaelen spoke first, his voice clear and carrying, meant for everyone to hear. Elara Vance, I do not offer you a crown because it is strategic. I offer you my heart because it is yours. I vow to honor your wisdom, to protect your spirit, and to stand with you as your equal in all things. You are my truth, my peace, and my future. I promise to build a world worthy of you. Tears blurred my vision, but my voice was strong. Kaelen Thorne, I do not stand with you for power or prestige. I stand with you because you saw me when I was invisible to the world. I vow to be your shelter in the storm, your counsel in uncertainty, and your unwavering partner. You are my strength, my home, and my heart. I promise to walk this path with you always. Elder Cormac produced 2 simple, intertwined silver bands, the engagement bracelets of our people. Kaelen slid one onto my wrist. I slid the other onto his. The metal was cool, then warm against my skin. By the traditions of our people and by the authority vested in me, I declare this bond witnessed and sealed, Cormac announced. Let no force break what has been joined here today. The courtyard erupted in cheers. It was not the polite applause of nobility, but the roaring approval of warriors and common folk. It was the sound of acceptance. Kaelen did not kiss me. Instead, he raised our joined hands high, a gesture of victory and unity to the crowd.
Then he leaned close, his words for me alone. My queen. The feast that followed was held in the Great Hall, a simpler, heartier affair than the dinners at Elder Cormac's. There was roasted venison, crusty bread, local ale, and music from a trio of fiddlers. Kaelen and I sat at the high table, receiving well-wishers. Many were his trusted commanders, their congratulations gruff but sincere. Western lords who had remained loyal offered cautious bows. And then, a surprise. My father approached, Vivian hovering a step behind him, her expression a masterpiece of forced benevolence. "Father," I said, standing. He looked older, but there was a clarity in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. "Elara, Your Majesty." He bowed to Kaelen, then turned back to me. You look like your mother." The simple words held a world of meaning. I saw a flicker of the man he used to be, buried under grief. "Thank you, Father." Vivian stepped forward, her smile tight. "We are so pleased for you, Elara. Such an unexpected blessing." Kaelen's voice was cool. "Indeed, your support is noted, Lady Vance." The dismissal in his tone was unmistakable. Vivian's smile froze, and she retreated, pulling my father with her. Seraphina, I noted, was conspicuously absent. Later, as the festivities wound down, Kaelen and I stole away to the battlements once more. The stars were brilliant diamonds scattered across the velvet sky. "It is done," I said, leaning against the cold stone parapet. "The first step." "Only the first," he said, standing beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. "The traditionalists will see this as a provocation. They will move against us soon. Are you ready?" I looked out at the dark, sleeping valley, then at the silver bracelet on my wrist. "I am ready to stand with you," I said. "That is all the readiness I need." He took my hand, his thumb rubbing over the intertwined metal. "Then we must prepare. The engagement is public. The next move is ours. We must draw the remaining snakes from their holes." "How?" "By giving them a target they cannot resist," he said, his eyes glinting in the starlight. "In 2 weeks, we will travel to the heart of the Western clans, to the Stone Summit for the formal blessing of the combined councils. It is a journey through vulnerable passes, an opportunity they will find tempting." "You mean to use ourselves as bait?" "It is the quickest way to end this. I will not have you looking over your shoulder for the rest of our lives. I will have every threat to you eradicated before our wedding day." The plan was bold, dangerous, but I understood the necessity.
A life spent in hiding, even within a fortress, was no life at all, and I trusted him. I trusted Ryland's strength, Theron's cunning, Jackson's vigilance, and I was beginning to trust my own instincts. "Then we will travel to the stone summit," I said, squeezing his hand. "Together." He brought my hand to his lips again. Together. The next 2 weeks were a flurry of strategic planning disguised as ceremonial preparation. Routes were mapped, contingencies discussed in low voices in Kaelen's chamber. Our traveling party would be small but formidable. Ourselves, his 3 lieutenants, a hand-picked unit of 20 of Ryland's best fighters. We would travel fast and light, but every detail was meticulously planned. The night before our departure, the dream returned. Not of shadows or libraries, but of the ambush. The flash of steel, the snarls, Kaelen falling. I woke with a gasp, my heart racing. A moment later, the door between our chambers opened. Kaelen stood there, a silhouette in the moonlight. "Elara?" "A nightmare," I whispered. He crossed the room and sat on the edge of my bed, his hand finding mine in the dark. "Of the ambush?" "Of losing you." He was silent for a moment. "I have the same dream. But tomorrow we are not victims. We are the hunters setting the trap. Remember that." His certainty was a cloak around my fear. I lay back down and he stayed, holding my hand until my breathing evened, and sleep, dreamless this time, reclaimed me. At first light we assembled in the main yard. Horses stamped and snorted, their breath pluming in the cold air. I was dressed in practical, warm riding clothes, a dark cloak over my shoulders. Kaelen looked every inch the warrior king, his expression grim and focused. He helped me mount a steady gray mare, his hand lingering on my leg for a brief, reassuring moment. Theron gave a final nod. "The route is set. Scouts are already ahead." Jackson's eyes continuously scanned the high ridges. Ryland simply hefted his massive axe, his meaning clear. Kaelen swung onto his own black stallion. He looked at me, then at his men. "For unity," he said, his voice carrying in the crisp air. "And for our future. Forward." The gates creaked open, and we rode out into the pale dawn, leaving the safety of the fortress behind. We were riding into the jaws of the conspiracy, but we were doing it on our terms. The game was reaching its endgame, and I was no longer a piece on the board. I was a player, riding beside the king, ready to face whatever the mountain passes held. Chapter 8. The Mountain Pass. The journey to the stone summit was a study of breathtaking beauty and coiled tension. We traveled through valleys where rivers carved paths through ancient stone, up switchback trails that offered dizzying views of snow-dusted peaks, and through dense, silent pine forests, where the only sound was the crunch of hooves on frozen ground. The beauty was a stark contrast to the purpose of our travel. Every shadowed copse, every rocky outcrop was a potential ambush point. Jackson and the scouts ranged ahead and flanked us, their movements silent and seamless. Ryland was a constant reassuring bulwark at Kaelen's side. Theron rode near me, his mind undoubtedly turning over 100 strategic permutations. Kaelen himself was a figure of focused intensity, but he made a point to ride beside me whenever the path allowed, pointing out an eagle soaring on thermal currents or the way the light filtered through the trees. These small, shared moments were anchors of normality in the sea of anticipation. On the third day, we entered the Serpent's Pass, a narrow, winding defile between 2 sheer cliffs. It was the most vulnerable point on our journey, and the air grew thick with unspoken alertness. The only sounds were the clatter of hooves on loose scree and the sigh of the wind through the high rocks. We were halfway through when Jackson, who had been scouting ahead, came riding back at a hard gallop. His face was set in grim lines. "Contact," he said, reining in beside Kaelen. 2 groups, one ahead blocking the pass exit, another behind us, closing the entrance.
"They mean to trap us in the kill box." Kaelen's expression didn't change. "Numbers. 30, perhaps 40 total. Better armed than the last. Professional mercenaries by the look of them." Kaelen nodded, as if receiving a weather report. He turned to Ryland. "Hold the rear.
Farron, with me at the front. Jackson, take Elara to the defensible point we discussed. Protect her. No! The word was out of my mouth before I could stop it. All eyes turned to me. I will not hide while you fight, I said, my voice trembling not with fear but with conviction. I am part of this. I will not be a liability you must defend. I can fight. Elara, Kaelen began, his voice a warning. I am not a warrior, I cut him off, but I can use a dagger. I can follow orders, and I will not cower in a hole. Please, let me stand with you. Not at the front line, he said, his eyes searching mine, but with Theron at the center. You will guard our backs and our supplies. If the line breaks, you retreat to the defensible point. Do you understand? It was a compromise, but it was trust. I nodded sharply. I understand. He reached over, his gloved hand briefly cupping my cheek. Be safe. For me. Then he was all Alpha King again. Positions. The company shifted with disciplined speed. Rylan and half the guards turned their horses to face the rear, forming a bristling wall of steel. Kaelen, Theron, and the others advanced toward the front blockage. Jackson positioned me and 2 other guards near the pack horses, in a slightly wider section of the pass, where we had some room to maneuver. My heart was a frantic bird in my chest. I drew the slender dagger Kaelen had given me days before. Not for decoration, I realized now, but for this moment. It felt alien and heavy in my hand. Then, from both ends of the pass, came the sounds of battle, the clash of steel, the shouts of men, the screams of horses. It was a horrifying symphony. I saw flashes of movement at the front, Kaelen a whirlwind of controlled violence, his sword a silver blur. Rylan at the rear was an immovable object, his axe cutting through wheat like wheat. Time lost meaning. It was a chaotic, brutal ballet of survival. Then a new sound, scrabbling from above. I looked up. Figures were rappelling down the cliff faces on ropes, bypassing the main battle lines to strike at the heart of our column. They're targeting you, Theron shouted, shoving me behind a large boulder as arrows thudded into the ground where I'd been standing. 3 attackers landed, their eyes immediately finding me. The 2 guards with me engaged 2 of them. The third, a wiry man with a cruel scar across his face, came straight for me. Everything narrowed to his advance. The lessons from the books, the desperate move I'd used on Aldrich, it all fled my mind. There was only his snarling face and the glint of his sword. He lunged. I didn't think. I moved. I ducked under his swing, the wind of it ruffling my hair, and drove my dagger upward, not at his chest, but at the inside of his sword arm. It was a move I'd read about, disabling, not killing. The blade bit deep. He roared in pain, his sword falling from nerveless fingers. I scrambled back, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the dagger now slick with blood. He clutched his arm, hatred burning in his eyes, but he was disarmed. One of our guards, having dispatched his opponent, slammed the hilt of his sword into the man's temple, dropping him unconscious. "Are you hurt?" Farron was at my side, his own blade bloodied. I shook my head, unable to speak, my whole body trembling with adrenaline. The fight was ending. The ambushers, finding themselves caught between Rylan's anvil and Kaelen's hammer, were breaking, those who could fleeing back the way they came. Silence descended, broken only by the moans of the wounded and the harsh panting of the survivors. Kaelen appeared, striding toward me through the carnage. There was a bloody cut on his cheek, but his eyes were wild with fear until they landed on me, whole and standing. He crossed the distance in 3 strides, his hands coming up to grip my arms, his gaze standing me for injuries. "You're bleeding," I whispered, reaching a trembling hand toward his cheek. He caught it, holding it tight. "It's nothing. You fought. I saw. I just reacted." He pulled me into his arms then, a brief, crushing embrace that spoke of terror and relief. "You are magnificent," he murmured into my hair. Then he released me, the king once more. "Farron, casualties?" "Light, your majesty. 3 wounded, none gravely. Their losses were heavy. Prisoners?" "A few. They are being secured."
Kaelen's gaze turned to the scarred man I had wounded, who was now being bound. He walked over, his presence causing the captive to flinch. "Who sent you?" Kaelen's voice was soft, deadly. The man spit on the ground. "The true alphas of the blood. You are a usurper, and your whore." His words were cut off as Kaelen's hand shot out, not to strike, but to grasp the man's chin, forcing him to look up. "You will speak of my betrothed with respect, or you will lose your tongue. Now, who sent you?" The man's bravo crumbled under the glacial fury in Kaelen's eyes. "A lord, Lord Gravel. He funds us. The orders, they come from the council, the Shadow Council. They meet at the stone summit." Gravel, Kaelen released him, turning to Theron. He was on the guest list for the blessing ceremony. Of course he was. He plans to strike there where all the leadership is gathered. This ambush was to delay us or eliminate us beforehand. "We must ride," Kaelen said, "immediately. The summit is in greater danger than we knew." "But the wounded," I began. "Rylan will stay with them, fortify here, and follow with the prisoners," Kaelen decided. "The rest of us ride on. Now. We cannot let this Shadow Council act." Within minutes, we were mounted again, leaving the bloody pass behind. The mood was no longer of wary travel, but of urgent purpose. The final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. The enemy's stronghold was our destination. The blessing ceremony was not just a formality now. It was a battlefield, and we were riding straight into its heart. Chapter 9. The Stone Summit. We pushed the horses hard, trading stealth for speed. The majestic landscape became a blur of green and gray and white. My mind replayed the ambush in flashes, the snarl of the scarred man, the feel of the dagger hitting home, the crushing relief in Kaelen's embrace. I was changed. I had faced violence and not broken. I had defended myself. The thought was terrifying and empowering in equal measure. We reached the foothills of the stone summit as the sun began to its descent, casting long, dramatic shadows. The summit itself was not a single peak, but a massive, flat-topped mesa, accessible by a single steep road carved into the rock face.
At its top stood the ancient meeting stones, a circle of monoliths where the packs had gathered for centuries to settle disputes and forge alliances. It was the most sacred neutral ground in the territories. Torches already flickered up on the plateau, and we could see the shapes of many tents and banners. The blessing ceremony was to begin at nightfall. We dismounted at the base of the road, leaving the horses with a few guards. We would ascend on foot. Kaelen gathered us close, his voice low and urgent. Gravel and his Shadow Council believe their ambush succeeded, or at least delayed us. Our arrival will be a shock. Theron, you and Jackson blend into the crowd. Identify every member of this council you can. Rylan's men will be here soon, but we cannot wait. Elara, stay close to me. The ceremony itself will be our stage. We will expose them before all the clans. It was a daring plan. To reveal the conspiracy publicly at the most sacred of gatherings would legitimize our actions and utterly destroy the traitor's credibility, but it required perfect timing and placed us at the center of the viper's nest. I adjusted the sapphire pendant at my throat, a silent touchstone. I am ready. The climb up the winding road was arduous, the thin, cold air burning my lungs. As we neared the top, the sounds of the gathering reached us, the murmur of hundreds of voices, the scent of roasting meat and wood smoke. We emerged onto the vast, flat summit. It was a breathtaking sight. The great standing stones, twice the height of a man, formed a perfect circle in the center, illuminated by massive braziers. Around them, representatives from dozens of packs milled, their formal robes and clan colors a vibrant tapestry against the darkening sky. Our arrival caused an immediate stir. Heads turned, conversations died. Kaelen, still in his travel-stained fighting leathers with a bloodied cut on his face, looked every inch the warrior king returning from battle. I walked beside him, my own cloak dusty but my head high. Elder Cormac hurried forward, his face a mask of shock. "Your Majesty, we did not expect—" We encountered difficulties on the road, Kaelen interrupted, his voice carrying. An ambush in the Serpent's Pass. A gasp rippled through the crowd. An ambush? On neutral ground travel? Who would dare? A voice called out. I saw Lord Greville step forward from a group of Western lords. He was a handsome man with silver at his temples and a carefully cultivated air of concern. A terrible outrage, Your Majesty. We must dispatch guards to hump these brigands at once. The concern was perfectly performed, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. Shock quickly masked. He had not expected to see us alive. The brigands have been dealt with, Kaelen said, his eyes locking onto Greville, and they were most informative. They spoke of funding, of a council that pulls their strings, a shadow council that operates here, among us, seeking to return us to the days of blood and chaos. The crowd erupted into outraged shouts and confused murmurs. Lies, a plot to divide us, Greville cried, spreading his hands in a gesture of appeal to the assembly. This is clearly an Eastern fabrication to undermine Western solidarity. Is it? Farron's calm, clear voice cut through the noise. He stepped forward from the crowd, holding a sheaf of papers. Intercepted correspondence, my lords, financial ledgers tracing payments from a network of accounts owned by you, Lord Greville, to known mercenary captains, instructions for today's ambush, plans for a disturbance during tonight's blessing, to eliminate key leaders who support unification. Greville's face went ashen. Forged, all of it. Jackson materialized on the other side of the stone circle, leading two of the captured ambushers, including the scarred man, their hands bound. These men identified you as their paymaster, Greville. They identified this gathering as their ultimate target. The crowd's mood turned ugly, a wave of betrayal and fury rolling toward Greville and the men who now shrank away from him. You cannot prove. I can and I have, Kaelen declared, his voice ringing with final authority. By the laws of this sacred circle, I accuse you, Lord Alistair Greville, and your co-conspirators of treason against the United Territories, of attempted assassination, and of sowing discord among the Pax. Seize them. Ryland's men, having just reached the summit, moved forward. But Greville, cornered and desperate, did something unexpected. He didn't try to flee. He drew a concealed, ornate dagger from his robe, not to fight, but to hold it aloft. It is not treason to fight for the old ways, to fight against the tyrant who would dilute our blood and our traditions with his pity for the weak. His wild gaze swept the crowd and landed on me, and he chooses as his queen this nothing, a pale ghost with no strength, no lineage, proof that his vision is weak. He is fit to leave wolves, he is fit only for sheep. The insult was meant to enrage Kaelen, to make him react violently, to turn the narrative back to passion and pride. But before Kaelen could move, I stepped forward. I walked into the center of the stone circle, into the full light of the braziers, facing Greville and the entire assembled leadership of the territories. My heart hammered, but my voice, when it came, was clear and steady, carrying on the cold, thin air. You speak of strength, Lord Greville. You equate it with bloodline, with violence, with the loudest voice in the room. I looked around at the sea of faces, some hostile, many uncertain. I have seen true strength. It is in the quiet resolve of a king who unites instead of conquers. It is in the loyalty of men who follow not out of fear, but out of shared purpose. It is in the endurance of Pax who have known nothing but war, yet dare to hope for peace. I am not a warrior born of your old, proud lines. I am the daughter of a fading house. I have found my strength not on a battlefield, but in truth, in observation, in the courage to stand for what is right, even when I am afraid. And I am not afraid of you. I turned my gaze back to Greville. Your strength is a hollow thing. It is built on betrayal, on shadows, on the fear that unity will render your petty ambitions obsolete. The king you call weak has defeated your ambush and uncovered your conspiracy without breaking the peace of this sacred circle. That is strength. That is leadership. and I am proud to stand beside him." A profound silence followed my words. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single voice, rough and clear, shouted, "Well said." Another joined, then another. The sentiment spread, a groundswell of approval, not for a queen of noble blood, but for the truth she spoke. Greville stood, utterly defeated, the dagger hanging limply in his hand. He had lost, not just the physical fight, but the war for the hearts of the people.
Kaelen came to stand beside me, his shoulder touching mine. He did not look at me, but his voice was for my ears alone. "My queen." Then, to the crowd, "Justice will be served according to our laws, but let this night not be marred by treachery. Let it be remembered as the night we reaffirmed our unity. Let the blessing ceremony proceed." As the guards led Greville and his conspirators away, the elders regrouped. The atmosphere was electric, charged with a new kind of energy. The ceremony was simple, ancient. Kaelen and I stood in the very center of the stone circle. The head elder from each major territory stepped forward, placing a hand on our joined hands, speaking words of blessing for our union and for the peace it represented. When it was done, Kaelen turned to me. In the light of the sacred flames, with the eyes of the united territories upon us, he spoke vows that were not of politics, but of the heart, reaffirming the promises we had made in the fortress courtyard. And I spoke mine, my voice steady, my love for him shining brighter than any torch. The conspiracy was broken, the Shadow Council was exposed, and in the heart of the ancient stones, under the watchful stars, the Alpha King and his chosen queen were not just blessed by tradition, they were forged in the fire of trial, and their bond was unbreakable. The way forward was clear. The real work of building a lasting peace could now begin. Chapter 10: The Harbor and the Storm. The days following the Stone Summit were a whirlwind of justice and reconciliation. The public trials of Greville and his co-conspirators were swift and severe, conducted under the open sky before the assembled packs. Their guilt was undeniable, the evidence presented by Heroine damning and comprehensive. Their sentences, exile for some, lifelong imprisonment in remote fortresses for the ringleaders like Greville, sent a clear message: betrayal of the United Territories would be met with absolute, unyielding consequences. But Kaelen was careful not to let the victory taste of vengeance. In his addresses to the people, he spoke of closing a dark chapter, of looking forward. He praised the Western clans for their loyalty in the face of deception, strengthening their sense of inclusion. We remained at the Stone Summit for a week, using the gathering as an impromptu council of state. For the first time, Kaelen presided not as an Eastern conqueror, but as the confirmed leader of a truly united realm. Disputes over borders were brought forward and settled with surprising ease, the shadow of recent treason making petty squabbles seem shameful. Trade agreements were hammered out. Plans for shared defense, now that the internal threat was neutered, were established. I attended these sessions not as a silent observer, but as an active participant. My role had organically evolved. The packs saw me not just as Kaelen's betrothed, but as the woman who had faced down a traitor in the sacred circle with words, not weapons. They began to bring concerns to me, disputes that involved cultural nuances Kaelen might miss, issues of education and record-keeping that appealed to my known interests. I found I had a talent for mediation, for listening to all sides and finding the common thread. One evening, after a long day of councils, Kaelen and I walked the perimeter of the summit. The air was cold and clean, the stars a breathtaking tapestry. "You were remarkable today," he said, taking my hand. "The way you resolved the water rights dispute between the Riverfall and the Grey Rock packs, they left as allies, not grudging neighbors." "I just listened," I said. "They both wanted security for their people. I merely helped them see their security was intertwined." "That," he said, stopping to face me, "is a rare and precious skill. You make them see their shared future. You make me see it more clearly." He brushed a stray lock of hair from my forehead. "The formal wedding, we should not wait. Let us have it at the first thaw in the valley below my family's ancestral seat. It is beautiful there, green and full of life. I want to start our life together in a place of growth, not stone." The thought filled me with a warm, quiet joy. I would like that, but my father, he should be there. "And he will be," Kaelen said firmly. "I have already sent for him. An invitation, not a summons. The choice is his, but I believe he will come." He was right. A few days later, my father arrived, alone. Vivian, according to his tight-lipped explanation, had chosen to remain at their estate with Seraphina, who was indisposed. I felt a pang of sorrow for him, for the life he had built on the ashes of his grief, but also a sense of relief. His presence felt like a bridge to my past, to the girl I had been before the weight of the crown found me. "Father," I greeted him, taking his hands. He looked at me, really looked, and his eyes grew moist. You wear it well, Elara. The responsibility, the love. I am so very proud of you." It was all I had ever wanted to hear from him. We embraced, and for a moment the years of distance fell away. The planning for the spring wedding became a welcome distraction, a symbol of hope and new beginnings. Designated crafters from both East and West were commissioned to create the ceremony robes, blending traditional motifs. The fortress began to feel less like a garrison and more like a home being prepared for a celebration. Yet, amidst the planning, the work of governance continued. One afternoon, a messenger arrived, breathless and covered in road dust. He bore the seal of the furthest eastern reach, the Frostfang Range. Kaelen read the message, his expression turning grim. "Trouble?" I asked, setting aside a sketch of floral arrangements. "Bandits," he said, "or something dressed as bandits, attacking remote villages in the Frostfang, striking fast, taking supplies, and vanishing into the high passes. It's a pattern we saw before the unification, warlords testing weak borders." "Rylan should take a force," I said immediately. "Show strength, offer aid to the villages, and hunt them down." Kaelen nodded. "My thoughts exactly. But Rylan is needed here to oversee the security for the wedding preparations. I will go." My blood ran cold. "No, Kaelen, it could be a trap, a remnant of Grevil's faction luring you away." "Possibly," he admitted, "which is why I must go, to show that the king protects all his people, even in the farthest, most difficult reaches, to prove that our unity is not just words spoken at the stone summit." He came around the desk, taking my hands. "I will take Jackson and a mobile company."
"Theron will stay here with you and Rylan. You will be safe." "It is not my safety I fear for," I whispered. It was the old nightmare, resurfacing, the ambush in the pass, but without me there to stand with him. "I must do this, Elara. A king cannot rule from a fortress. He must be seen. He must defend." "I know," I said, swallowing my fear. "I know. But promise me you will be careful. Promise me you will come back to me." He lifted the sapphire pendant at my throat. "I carry your heart with me, remember? And I leave mine here, in your keeping. I will return. I always will." He left 2 days later, at dawn. I stood on the battlements with Theron and Rylan, watching the column of riders until they disappeared into the morning mist. The fortress felt cavernously empty without his presence. True to my word, I did not simply wait. I threw myself into work. With Theron's guidance, I began reviewing domestic reports, harvest yields, infrastructure needs, requests for aid from villages. I met with crafters and planners about the wedding, using it as a tool for diplomacy, ensuring representation from every major pack. Rylan drilled the guards with renewed intensity, the absence of his king making him doubly vigilant. Weeks passed. Messages came from Kaelen, carried by fast riders. They were terse, practical updates. The bandits were elusive, the terrain brutal, but progress was being made. He wrote of the resilience of the Frostfang people, of their cautious gratitude. He never wrote of danger, but I read between the lines. Then the messages stopped. 1 week of silence became 2. The first tendrils of true fear, cold and insidious, began to wrap around my heart. Farron tried to reassure me. Communications in the high ranges are difficult, my lady. Storms can block passes for days. Rylan just grunted, but I saw the worry in his eyes as he scanned the horizon each morning. On the first day of the 3rd week of silence, as I sat trying to concentrate on a trade ledger, a commotion erupted in the yard. Shouting, the sound of many horses. I rushed to the window. A rider covered in frost and mud was staggering from his horse into Rylan's arms. It was one of Jackson's scouts. I flew down the stairs, Theron on my heels. We reached the yard as the scout was gulping water, his face pale with exhaustion and something else. Grief. "Report, soldier," Rylan barked. The scout's eyes found me, and the pain in them stopped my breath. "Your Majesty, my lady, ambush, in the howling gorge. They were waiting. They knew our route. It was a massacre. The king..." The world tilted. Farron's gripped my arm to steady me. "The king." Farron's voice was razor sharp. The scout's face crumpled. He fought like a demon, held the line so others could retreat. But the gorge collapsed. Rockfall. We couldn't reach him. Jackson is still there with a search party, but there's no sign. He's gone. The words were physical blows. Gone. The stone fortress, the sky, the very air, it all dissolved into a roaring white noise of utter despair. Kaelen was gone. The mountain had finally claimed its king, and my heart, so newly and completely given, shattered into 1,000 frozen pieces. Chapter 11. The Queen in the Ashes. The world did not end with a roar, but with a terrible, hollow silence. The scout's words echoed in a vacuum where feeling should have been. Gone. No sign. I stood frozen in the muddy yard, the cold seeping through my boots, through my skin, into the marrow of my bones. Rylan's roar of denial was a distant thing. Farron's fingers on my arm were phantom touches. People were moving, shouting, but it was all muted, as if I were submerged in deep, icy water. Gone. Kaelen. His smile in the starlight, his hand in mine, the feel of his forehead against mine. The sapphire pendant was a burning brand of ice against my skin. Gone. Someone, I think Theron, guided me back inside, up the stairs to my chamber. He said words I didn't hear. The door closed. I was alone. The silence was absolute. I looked at the room, the chair where he used to sit, the desk where we'd worked side by side, the hearth where we'd shared our dreams. Every object was a dagger. The pain, when it finally broke through the numbness, was cataclysmic. It wasn't tears at first. It was a physical convulsion, a wrenching sob that tore from a place so deep I didn't know I possessed. I collapsed to the floor, the cool stones against my cheek, and wept. I wept for the future we would never have, for the wedding in the Green Valley, for the schools and the archives, and the quiet years growing old together. I wept for his laughter, for his weary honor, for the man who had seen me when I was invisible. I wept until there were no tears left, but a vast, desolate ache that filled every part of me. Hours passed, or maybe days. The light at the window faded and returned. A tray of food appeared and disappeared, untouched. Farron came, his face etched with its own grief. My lady, Elara, We must. The words meant nothing. Kaelen was gone. Nothing else mattered. On the third day, a different kind of cold began to seep in, not the cold of grief, but of a chilling, quiet certainty. I sat by the empty fireplace, the moonstone wolf and the sapphire pendant clutched in one hand. He promised to return. Kaelen Thorne did not make promises lightly. He was a strategist, a survivor. The rockfall, the ambush, it was too neat, too final. Like the conspiracy with Greville, it felt like a performance. Doubt, thin and sharp, pierced the fog of my sorrow. I stood, my legs stiff and weak. I washed my face in the cold water from the basin. I looked at the reflection, pale, hollow-eyed, but alive. Kaelen Thorne was fighting for a united realm. If he was truly gone, that realm was now leaderless, vulnerable. The bandits, the convenient ambush, what if it was not remnants of Greville's faction? What if it was a new threat, or an old one not fully eradicated? And what if a tiny, desperate, treacherous hope whispered, if he wasn't gone? I left my chamber. The fortress was a tomb of hushed voices and somber faces. I found Theron and Rylan in the war room, maps spread before them, their expressions grim. They looked up as I entered, surprise flickering in their eyes. I need to know everything, I said, my voice rough from disuse but clear. Every detail from the scout, the location, the composition of the enemy, the timing of the rockfall. Everything. Theron studied me for a long moment, then nodded. He began to recount the report with clinical precision.
The Howling Gorge, a narrow pass even more treacherous than the serpents. Evidence that the rock face had been deliberately weakened. Enemy numbers surprisingly high for bandits. Their retreat was swift, organized after the collapse. It was not a raid. It was an assassination attempt, and they believed they succeeded, Rylan growled, his fist clenched on the table. But you have doubts, I stated, looking at Theron, the master strategist. He met my gaze. The lack of a body is problematic. In such a collapse, it is not impossible, but Jackson is the best tracker alive. If there was a path out, even for one man, he would find it. He has sent no follow-up message, which means he is either still searching or... Theron trailed off. Or he has found something he cannot yet report, I finished. We must operate on two assumptions, I said, the words forming as I spoke them, the analytical part of my mind, nurtured by months at Kaelen's side, coming awake. First, that Kaelen lives but is missing, possibly injured, and that the enemy believes him dead. Second, that he is gone, and this attack is the opening move in a larger power play. In either case, the realm cannot be seen as weak. We must act as if he will return, and secure his kingdom for him. Rylan and Theron exchanged a look, a new respect dawning in their eyes. "What do you propose, my lady?" Theron asked. "First, we send our own fastest riders to the Howling Gorge, not with a large force that might be watched, but in pairs, to find Jackson and support the search. Second, we tighten security here, but discreetly. The news of the king's disappearance will spread. We must control that narrative. We say he is engaged in a protracted campaign in the Frostfang. Communications are difficult. We buy time. Third, we look for who benefits. Who would move against a unified realm?" Theron nodded slowly. "The traditionalists are broken, but there are always opportunists, lords on the periphery who chafed under Greville as much as under Kaelen. Or," his eyes narrowed, "or an external threat, one we haven't considered. The southern marches have been quiet, too quiet." My father's words about the dangerous world Kaelen inhabited echoed in my mind. This was that world, in all its brutal reality. I am not a soldier,
I said, "but I am his betrothed. In his absence, the Pax will look for leadership. We must show them continuity. We will continue the wedding preparations. We will hold councils. We will govern. We will make it impossible for our enemies to exploit chaos." Rylan stood straighter. "The men will follow you, my lady. They saw you in the pass. They heard you at the summit. You have the steel in you." The next weeks were the hardest of my life. Each day was a performance of strength, while inside I was a landscape of ashes and fragile hope. I presided over councils, making decisions with Theron's guidance, always framing them as the king's intended policy. I met with worried lords, projecting a calm assurance I did not feel. I reviewed military dispatches, learning the language of strategy and deployment. I was building a dam against a tide of despair, one stone of duty at a time. My father, to his credit, stayed. He became a quiet support, handling logistical details, offering a steady, uncomplicated presence. He saw my grief, but he also saw my resolve. "I am proud of you, daughter," he said one evening, his voice thick. "Your mother would be too." The words were a comfort, a reminder that strength could be inherited, could be grown. Then, a month after the terrible news, a new message arrived, not from the east, but from the south. It was a formal, sealed missive from the Alpha of the Southern Marches, a man named Torvin. It expressed condolences for the king's tragic loss in the Frostfang, news we had not publicly confirmed. It then extended an invitation, for me, to visit the Southern Marches for mutual understanding and discussion of future relations in this time of transition. The veneer was polite. The threat was palpable. They knew Kaelen was gone. They were testing the waters, seeing if the new, untested Queen Regent could be intimidated or manipulated. It was a trap as clear as the one in the Howling Gorge. "We cannot refuse," Theron said grimly. "It would be seen as weakness, but you cannot go. It is too dangerous." I read the letter again, the formal script blurring before my eyes. If I refused, I showed fear. If I went without leverage, I walked into a cage. "We need a show of strength," I said slowly. "Not just soldiers, a show of unity. We will accept, but we do not go to them. We invite Alpha Torvin and his council here, to the wedding." Theron's eyebrows shot up. "The wedding? But Kaelen, we proceed as if he is returning," I said, a desperate, wild plan forming. "We set the date. We send out the final invitations, including to Torvin. We prepare the fortress not just for a celebration, but for a display of the United Territories' power and cohesion. If Kaelen returns, the wedding is real. If he does not, it is the perfect stage to confront Torvin, surrounded by our allies, on our ground." "It is a colossal gamble," Theron said, but a spark of admiration lit his eyes. "It is bold. It is what Kaelen would do." "It is what we must do," I said, my hand closing around the sapphire pendant. "We will use his promise as our shield. We will make our stand not in mourning, but in the name of a future he believed in. We will show them that even in his absence, his kingdom stands united, and we will force the snakes to show themselves once and for all." The queen was no longer weeping in ashes. She was rising from them, clad in resolve and strategy. The battle for the kingdom was not over. It had just entered a new, more dangerous phase, and I was ready to fight. Chapter 12. The Gathering Storm. Preparations for the wedding, or what the world would believe was a wedding, became a military campaign disguised as a festival. Invitations, crafted by Theron with exquisite diplomatic ambiguity, were sent to every corner of the United Territories and to the Southern Marches. They spoke of the joyous union of Alpha King Kaelen Thorne and Lady Elara Vance, cementing the alliance of East and West, and the reaffirmation of peace and prosperity for all. The date was set for 6 weeks hence, at the first true thaw. The response was immediate and telling. From our own territories came pledges of attendance, gifts, and troops. offers of honor guards that Rylan expertly integrated into the fortress defenses. The packs were rallying, not just to a wedding, but to the symbol of continuity it represented. From the southern marches came a reply from Alpha Torvin. It was courteous, accepting the invitation, and expressing eager anticipation to celebrate this historic bond. The subtext was clear. He was coming to take the measure of the new regime. Theron's network of spies reported increased activity along the southern border, not invasions but probing movements, larger patrols. Torvin was preparing his own show of strength. The fortress transformed. Where there had been stern practicality, now there were banners and garlands being woven. But beneath the festive veneer, the machinery of defense ground on. Rylan drilled the expanded guard until they moved as one organism. Hidden caches of weapons were established, lookouts were doubled, escape routes for non-combatants were planned. I was at the center of it all, a figurehead with a working mind. My days were split between reviewing security plans with Rylan, discussing political nuances with Theron, and performing the public duties of a queen-to-be, meeting with crafters, tasting menu proposals, walking the grounds so all could see me calm and assured. The effort was exhausting. Every night I would return to my chamber, the silence there a physical weight. I would hold the moonstone and the sapphire and allow myself 5 minutes of pure, unguarded grief. I would whisper to the empty air, "Where are you?" There was never an answer, but the act of asking kept the hope, that fragile, treacherous flame, alive. One afternoon, a familiar, grizzled figure rode through the gates. Jackson. He was thinner, covered in the grime of the mountains, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion, but they burned with a fierce intensity. He went directly to the war room, where Theron, Rylan, and I were meeting. My heart stopped at the sight of him. "Report," Rylan barked, though his relief was evident. Jackson's eyes found mine first. He nodded once, a gesture of profound respect. We searched the Howling Gorge for 3 weeks, every crevice, every slide. We found remnants of the ambush party. They were not bandits. Their gear was southern-made. We found blood, a lot of it. Kaelen's? Theron asked quietly. Some, yes, but not a fatal amount. And then we found a trail, a single set of tracks leading out of the gorge to the north, into the trackless peaks. The terrain, it's impossible country, but the tracks were his. He was alive when he left that gorge. Alive. The word was a sunburst in the dark chamber of my heart. He's alive. But the trackless peaks, Theron breathed. No one comes out of there in winter. He is not no one, Jackson said, a flicker of something like pride in his voice. I followed as far as I could. The trail was clever, meant to be lost, but he was moving with purpose, not wandering, surviving. I left markers, supplies in caches, but I had to return. We needed the truth here. You have it, I said, my voice thick. Thank you, Jackson. He is alive. Now we must ensure he has a kingdom to return to. We updated Jackson on the situation with Torvin and the wedding plan. He listened, nodding. It's a good plan, force their hand, but they will come expecting to find a grieving woman and a divided court. We must give them a united front and a surprise. What kind of surprise? I asked. A show of force they don't expect, Jackson said, a grim smile touching his lips. The Frostfang clans. They owe Kaelen their loyalty. I passed through their lands on my return. They heard the rumors of his death. They are furious. They believe it was southern work. If they were to arrive, unexpectedly, as wedding guests. It was perfect, an eastern force, not part of our regular garrison, appearing as a display of the kingdom's reach and loyalty. It would unbalance Torvin's calculations. Do it, I said. Send word, discreetly. Jackson nodded. Consider it done. The following weeks were a tightrope walk of anticipation.
The fortress filled with guests, Western lords in their finery, Eastern chieftains in furs and leather, their cultural differences momentarily set aside under the shared banner of celebration. The air buzzed with music and conversation, but an undercurrent of tension hummed beneath it, like a hidden fault line. My father proved an unexpected asset, using his knowledge of Western nobility to smooth interactions and gather casual intelligence. Theron was everywhere, a master of ceremonies and clandestine meetings. Ryland's presence was a constant, stoic reassurance. The day before the ceremony, Alpha Thorne arrived. His retinue was large, polished, and armed to the teeth. He himself was a man of late middle age, with shrewd eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who believes he holds the winning hand. "Lady Elara," he said, bowing over my hand in the grand hall, "my deepest congratulations and my condolences for the prolonged absence of your betrothed. The realm is fortunate to have your strength in such trying times." The jab was deliberate, testing my reaction. I smiled, the expression practiced and serene. "Thank you, Alpha Thorne. Kaelen's duties in the Frostfang are indeed demanding, but his love and his commitment to our union and to this realm are unwavering. He would not miss our day for the world." I felt, rather than saw, the slight tightening around his eyes. He hadn't expected such calm certainty. The feast that night was a tense affair. Toasts were made to the future, to unity, but the subtext was a duel. Thorne held court at his table, surrounded by his men, telling loud stories of southern prowess. I sat at the high table, flanked by Theron and my father, listening graciously but letting our own display of unity, the mingling of Eastern and Western nobles, the obvious respect my father commanded, the disciplined efficiency of our guards, speak for itself. After the feast, as guests drifted away, Thorne approached me again. "A word in private, my lady." "Of course." We withdrew to a small antechamber, Jackson positioning himself just outside the door. Thorne dispensed with prelatories. "You are young, you have spirit, but you are in an untenable position. A realm cannot be led by hope and a woman's promise. The Frostfang campaign is a fiction we both understand. Kaelen Thorne is dead, my spies confirm it." I kept my face a mask. "Your spies are mistaken. He will return." "Even if he did," Thorne said, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "the mountains in winter are unforgiving. A man alone, injured, it would be a tragedy if he were to meet with another accident on his journey home. A true tragedy." The threat was naked now. My blood ran cold, but fury rose to meet it, hot and clean. "Are you threatening the Alpha King?" "I am offering you a choice," he said, "a realistic one. Dissolve this farce of a wedding, announce a period of mourning, and accept the protective alliance of the southern marches. I can offer stability, security. You would remain a figurehead, of course, comfortable, safe. Or you can cling to your ghost and watch this fragile unity splinter into war, and you, my dear, will be the first casualty." I looked at him, this man who thought power was taken through intimidation and deals in dark rooms. I thought of Kaelen, somewhere in the trackless peaks, fighting to survive. I thought of the people in this fortress, east and west, who had chosen hope.
I stood, drawing myself to my full height. I am not a figurehead, Alpha Thorne. I am Elara Vance, betrothed of Kaelen Thorne, and by the laws of this united realm, the voice of authority in his absence. We do not seek your protection. We built this unity through strength and truth, and we will defend it with the same. There will be no alliance under threat. There will only be consequences for those who threaten us. His smile vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating glare. You are making a grave mistake.
"The mistake," I said, my voice ringing clear in the small room, "was yours. You came here thinking to find weakness. You found a kingdom, and tomorrow you will see just how united it is." I turned and left him there, Jackson falling into step behind me. My heart hammered, but my resolve was iron. The lines were drawn. The final move was Torvin's, and we were ready for it. The wedding day dawned, clear and cold. It was not a day for a green valley, but for a stone fortress standing defiant against the gathering storm. Today, we would either celebrate a union or fight for a kingdom, and I was ready for either outcome. The morning of the wedding dawned with a sky of hard, flawless blue, the sun a pale gold disk against the frost-whitened peaks. It was a beautiful, brittle day, perfectly suited for the performance or the battle to come. Within my chamber, the atmosphere was one of focused preparation, not bridal nerves. The dove gray and silver gown was laid out, but beside it, on a table, lay a finely crafted leather jerkin and a pair of sturdy, practical boots. I would be dressed for a ceremony, but prepared for a fight. Theron arrived as the maid was fastening the last silver clasp. He looked more like a general than an advisor today, his usual robes exchanged for dark, functional clothing, a slender sword at his hip. "The Frostfang clans have arrived," he reported, his voice low. 200 strong, they encamped in the eastern woods, hidden from the main gates. They await the signal. Rylan has the fortress guards at full alert, positioned as honor guards but armed for combat. Jackson's scouts report Torvin's men are restless. They've been checking weapons and horses since before dawn. He plans to move today. "During the ceremony?" I asked, my fingers checking the secure placement of the sapphire pendant and the moonstone wolf beneath my gown. "Most likely at the final vow," Theron said. "Maximum symbolic disruption. He wants to demonstrate that our unity is a sham, that he can shatter it at its most sacred moment. Then we shall be ready to demonstrate otherwise," I said, my voice calm. "Is my father secure?" "With the non-combatants in the inner keep, along with the elderly and the children, he will help keep order." "Good." I took a final look in the mirror. The woman who stared back was pale but composed, her eyes holding a steady light. She was not a girl dreaming of a fairy tale. She was a queen defending her king's legacy. "Let us go." The ceremony was to be held in the main courtyard, as our engagement had been. It was already filled to overflowing with guests from all territories, their colorful garb a vibrant mosaic against the gray stone. A canopy of deep blue and silver had been erected. The air was thick with anticipation, but to the unaware it might have seemed like festival excitement. I made my way through the crowd on Theron's arm. Eyes followed me, curious, sympathetic, calculating. I saw Torvin near the front, surrounded by his phalanx of guards, a smug, half-smile on his face. He gave me a slight, mocking bow. I ignored him, my gaze sweeping the battlements where Ryland's men stood at attention and the high windows where I knew archers were discreetly positioned. I reached the canopy. The officiant, a revered elder from a neutral western pack, stood waiting, looking nervous. Theron placed my hand in empty air. A murmur ran through the crowd. This was the moment, the missing king, the broken ritual. Torvin's smile widened, but before he could speak, I turned to face the assembly, my voice projecting with a strength I borrowed from the memory of Kaelen's own. "People of the United Territories, friends and allies, my betrothed, Alpha King Kaelen Thorne, fights to secure our northern borders even on this, our joyous day. His duty to your safety comes before all else. But his heart is here, his promise is here. And so, with his authority vested in me, and with the witness of all of you, I will speak his vows for him, as he would wish." I turned back to the officiant. "Please, begin." The elder, gathering his courage, nodded. The ceremony proceeded.
I spoke my vows to Kaelen, my voice clear and full of a love that was no performance. Then I spoke his vows for him, the words we had written together, the promises of partnership and shared rule. It was unorthodox, it was powerful, it was a declaration that his will and our union transcended his physical presence. Torvin's smile had vanished. This was not going to plan. We were not breaking, we were adapting, strengthening. As the elder pronounced the final blessing, Torvin stepped forward. "Enough of this charade," he shouted, his voice cutting through the solemn silence. "The king is dead. This woman presumes to rule with ghostly vows. The southern marches will not stand by while this realm falls into the hands of a deluded girl." His guards drew their swords with a unified rasp. Gasps and cries erupted from the crowd. This was his move. Chaos. But Ryland's voice boomed from the battlements. "Stand fast." In an instant, our honor guards shifted, forming a protective ring around the courtyard, their weapons not ceremonial, but lethally real. The archers in the windows stood, arrows nocked. The courtyard was sealed. "Torvin, you are the one deluded," I said, my voice ringing out, calm amidst the tension. "You see a power vacuum where there is only unity. You see weakness where there is resolve. You came here under a flag of peace to plot treason. By the laws you have just broken, you are an enemy of this realm." Torvin laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Your guards are outnumbered, girl. My men are at the gates." He raised a horn to his lips and blew a sharp, piercing note. We waited. Silence. Then the thunder of hooves, but not from outside the gates. From the eastern tree line, hidden from view, a wave of riders erupted. The Frostfang clansmen, on shaggy mountain ponies, their faces painted for war, their battle cries echoing off the stones. They circled the outer walls, not entering, but cutting off any retreat for Torvin's forces outside. Inside the courtyard, Torvin's confidence shattered into panic. He hadn't anticipated a second army. You planned this," he snarled at me. "I planned to defend my home," I said. "You provided the provocation. Now lay down your arms."
This ends now. For a moment, violence hung in the balance. Torvin's men looked to him, fear in their eyes. They were surrounded, outmaneuvered. Torvin's gaze darted around, seeking an escape that didn't exist. His shoulders slumped in defeat. He dropped his sword. It clattered on the stones, a hollow sound. His men followed suit. It was over. Without a single drop of blood shed in the courtyard, the coup had been thwarted. Ryland's guards moved in swiftly, disarming and securing Torvin and his inner circle. The Frostfang chieftain, a massive man with a frost-rimed beard, rode through the now open gates and dismounted before me. He placed his fist over his heart. "The Frostfang stands with the true king and his queen. We have not forgotten his justice." "Justice," I said, loud enough for all to hear, "will be served today. But not with more bloodshed. Alpha Torvin will be held according to our laws, and a message will be sent to the southern marches. We are united, we are vigilant, and we desire peace, but we will defend ourselves against any aggression." The crowd, which had been holding its breath, erupted in cheers, not the polite applause of before, but a roaring, cathartic release of tension and triumph. The attempted betrayal had backfired spectacularly, only serving to prove the strength of the bonds Kaelen had forged. As Torvin was led away, the Frostfang chieftain approached me again, his voice low. "My lady, one more thing. Our scouts, ranging ahead of our main party, they found a man, in the high passes, half frozen, fighting off a southern assassination squad sent to clean up the loose end from the gorge. He was bringing him here, under heavy guard. He should arrive by nightfall." My heart stopped, then began to pound a wild, frantic rhythm. "A man?" The chieftain's eyes held a spark of knowing.
a man with eyes like a winter sky who would not stop asking if his queen was safe. The world swam before my eyes. Baron's hand was suddenly under my elbow, steadying me. It can't be. We must prepare, my lady, Theron said, his own voice thick with emotion, for his return, and for his care. He will be not unharmed. The ceremony, the confrontation, the victory, they all faded into insignificance. Nothing mattered but the chieftain's words. A man with eyes like a winter sky. Kaelen was alive, and he was coming home.
That is a power I could never wield. It is our power, I corrected, squeezing his hand. I only held the line you built. I only spoke the truth you taught me to see. He lifted our joined hands, looking at the silver engagement bracelet on my wrist and the matching one, now scratched and dented, on his. The wedding. I am sorry I missed our vows. You didn't, I said, smiling through fresh tears. I spoke them for you, before everyone. They witnessed it. Our union is real, Kaelen, with or without a ceremony. He brought my hand to his, lips a tear tracing a path through the grime still on his cheek. Then we will have the ceremony again, in the Green Valley, when I can stand beside you properly, when I can dance with my queen. I leaned forward, resting my forehand against his. Whenever you are ready. You are here. You are here. We stayed like that for a long time, in the quiet intimacy of the firelit room. The storms of betrayal, of separation, of battle were past. We were in the harbor, battered but unbroken, and together. He fell asleep holding my hand. I watched the steady rise and fall of his chest, the lines of pain easing from his face. The king had returned, not to a kingdom in disarray, but to one forged stronger in his absence, not to a grieving woman, but to a queen who had earned her crown. Our story had been tested in fire and ice, and it had held. And now, the true work, the peaceful, building work we had dreamed of, could finally begin. Chapter 15. The Green Valley. The first thaw came softly to the valley below the Thorne ancestral seat. Winter's grip loosened, revealing patches of emerald grass, and the air carried the sweet, damp scent of earth and new growth. It was a place of gentle slopes and ancient, wide canopied trees, a stark and beautiful contrast to the stone fortresses that had defined so much of our story. This was where Kaelen had promised me a wedding, and today that promise would be kept. There were no hidden daggers here, no political traps woven into the garlands. The guests who filled the meadow were true allies and friends. Frostfang chieftains laughing with western lords, Theron conversing easily with my father, Rylan overseeing a feast table with a surprisingly domestic pride, Jackson a watchful but contented presence at the periphery. The security was discreet, a distant ring of trusted guards ensuring the peace, but the feeling was of pure, unshadowed celebration. I stood within a pavilion of white silk, looking out at the gathering. My gown was not gray or silver, but a simple, radiant white, embroidered at the hem and sleeves with delicate vines and wolves in silver thread. East and west, nature and spirit intertwined. At my throat, the sapphire pendant gleamed. In my hand, I held the moonstone wolf. I was not nervous. I was profoundly, utterly at peace. A soft knock. Theron entered, offering his arm. He was smiling, a true, unrestrained smile that transformed his face. "It is time, my queen." He led me out into the sunlight. A path of wildflowers led through the meadow to a simple arch woven from willow branches and early blossoms, and beneath it, waiting for me, stood Kaelen. He was clean-shaven, the gauntness replaced by a recovered strength. He wore a dark green tunic,
the color of the green pines, with silver fastenings. His arm was out of the sling, though I knew it was still tender. But his eyes, they were the same steady sapphire blue that had seen me in a stone corridor and changed my world. They held a love so deep and sure it took my breath away. I walked to him, and this time there was no crowd parting in shock, no whispers of confusion. There was only the sound of joyful birdsong and the soft rustle of the breeze. I took my place beside him, his fingers laced through mine, warm and solid. The officiant was an elder from the valley itself, her voice kind and wise. She spoke of growth, of roots, of 2 trees becoming a shelter for many. She spoke of partnership as the greatest strength. Then it was our turn. We had written new vows for this new beginning. Kaelen spoke first, his voice clear and strong, carrying over the rapt silence. Elara, my love, my truth, you are the sanctuary I never dared dream of. You saw the man behind the crown, and you taught the king to have a heart. I vow to spend my life worthy of your faith, to build a world of peace beside you, to cherish every quiet moment as much as every grand victory. You are my beginning and my end, my forever. My tears were happy ones, sparkling in the spring sun. I looked into the eyes of my king, my partner, my love. Kaelen, my strength, my home. You saw me when I was invisible, and you showed me I could be extraordinary.
You trusted me with your heart and your kingdom, and you gave me the courage to find my own strength. I vow to walk every path with you, to be your counsel and your comfort, to love you with a fierceness that matches your own for all the days of our lives. We exchanged rings this time, simple bands of platinum, to be worn beside our engagement bracelets. As the elder pronounced us bound for life, a cheer erupted from the meadow, not of political triumph, but of genuine joy. Kaelen did not kiss me then. Instead, he leaned close, his forehead touching mine, as was our way. In that private, public moment, he whispered, "My queen, my wife, my Elara." And I whispered back, "My king, my husband, my Kaelen." The feast was a lively, heartfelt affair. There was music and dancing. Kaelen, true to his word, danced with me, his arms strong around me, his steps careful of his injury but sure. We danced under the willow arch as the sun set, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold. Later, as torches were lit and the stars began to prick the twilight, we stole away from the celebration, walking hand in hand into the quiet of the orchard. We stopped beneath an ancient apple tree, its branches just beginning to bud. "It is over," I said, leaning against him. "The shadows, the fighting." "It is just beginning," he corrected gently, his arm around my shoulders. "The real work, the peaceful work. But we will do it together." I looked up at the first stars, then at his face, etched in the soft light. "Do you ever think of that night, in the grand hall, when you first saw me?" "Every day," he said. "It is the moment my world shifted from black and white into color. You were my unexpected truth. And you are my greatest victory, not the territories, not the United Pax, you." We stood there in the quiet, the sounds of the distant celebration a happy murmur. The moon rose, full and bright, bathing the green valley in silver. I thought of the long journey from that invisible girl to this woman, a queen standing beside her king in a field of new beginnings. The dandelion had not just survived the storm, she had helped calm it. She had put down roots deep enough to hold a mountain, and in doing so, had found she was an oak all along. Kaelen pressed a kiss to my temple. "Come, my love," he said softly. "Our people are waiting, and our future is just ahead." We turned and walked back toward the light and the laughter, toward the long, peaceful life we had fought so hard to win, together, always together. And as the music swelled to greet us, I knew this was no fairy tale ending. It was a true story, written in courage and love, and its best chapters were yet to be written.